I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. Before I unravel every thread of the life I thought I had built. I need you to know that I believed in second chances. I believed in forgiveness. I believed that love, real love, could survive anything if two people wanted it badly enough. I was wrong. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and 6 months ago, on what should have been the happiest day of my life, I discovered a betrayal so profound, so calculated, that it didn't just break my heart, it shattered every assumption I'd ever made about the people closest to me. But here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. It's never just one moment. It's 1,000 small deceits stacked on top of each other, building into something so monstrous that when you finally see it, you can't believe you missed it. You can't believe you were so blind. And if you're watching this from wherever you are in the world, comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from, because I want you to know you're not alone in this. If you've ever felt that sick, hollow feeling in your stomach when you realize someone you loved has been lying to your face, then you understand. You understand exactly where this story begins. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, if you've ever had your world turned upside down in a single moment, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story. It's a story about how far people will go to protect their secrets, and how far one woman will go to expose them. Check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories of survival, revenge, and finding strength in the darkest places. Let me take you back to April 14th. A Saturday. The day I was supposed to marry Marcus Chen for the second time. Yes, you heard that right. The second time. Marcus and I had been married for 11 years already. We'd eloped young, I was 23, he was 25, in a courthouse ceremony with 2 random witnesses we'd pulled off the street. It had been impulsive and romantic and completely us. But over the years, especially after our son Ethan was born, I'd always harbored this small regret that we'd never had a real wedding. No white dress, no family, no celebration. So when Marcus suggested, out of the blue last December, that we renew our vows with a proper ceremony, I cried. I actually cried. I thought it meant he still loved me the way he did when we were young. I thought it meant we'd made it through the hard years, the sleepless nights with a colicky baby, the financial struggles when Marcus was building his career as a software engineer, the growing distance that happens when life gets busy and complicated. I thought a wedding would fix us. I spent 4 months planning every detail. I worked with vendors, chose flowers, tasted cakes, sent invitations. I was a paralegal at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized law firm in downtown Portland, Oregon, and I used every lunch break, every spare moment, to make this wedding perfect. My colleague Jennifer helped me sometimes, even though she was swamped with her own caseload. She'd pull up Pinterest boards while we ate sad desk salads and she'd say things like, "Sarah, you deserve this. You deserve to feel like a bride." Jennifer Reeves. Remember that name. You're going to need it. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock at the Rose Gardens, this beautiful venue on the outskirts of Portland with views of Mount Hood. Everything was ready. My dress, a simple ivory gown with lace sleeves, was hanging in the bridal suite. The flowers were arranged. The guests were gathering. And I was standing in the hallway outside Marcus's office building at 11:47 a.m., my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Let me back up. That morning had started normally enough. I'd woken up at 6, too excited to sleep. Ethan, my 12-year-old son, was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with his headphones on, doing that thing preteens do where they're physically present but mentally somewhere in a YouTube video or a video game. He looked up when I walked in. "Morning, Mom," he said, pulling one earbud out. "Morning, baby. You excited for today?" Something flickered across his face. Something I couldn't quite read. But then he smiled, that crooked smile that looked so much like Marcus, and said, "Yeah. It's going to be great." I made us both breakfast, though I could barely eat. I kept checking my phone. Marcus had stayed at his office the night before, claiming he had a critical deadline for a project launch and needed to work late. He'd promised he'd meet me at the venue by noon to get ready together, take some pre-ceremony photos. At 10:30, My mother arrived to help me get ready. At 11, my best friend Rachel showed up with mimosas and a gift bag full of something old, something new trinkets. We were laughing, toasting, doing my makeup, when my phone buzzed. Marcus, running behind. Might be 15 minutes late to venue. Don't worry, I'll be there. Love you. I smiled. Texted back, no worries. See you soon. I love you too. But something nagged at me. Marcus had been running behind a lot lately. Working late, taking calls in the other room, being vague about his schedule. I'd attributed it to stress, to the project he was managing, to the normal wear and tear of an 11-year marriage. But that morning, getting ready to marry him again, I felt this whisper of doubt. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello. Is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice. Young. Nervous. Yes, who's this? My name is. It doesn't matter. I work at your husband's office. I think you should know that Marcus isn't working right now. He's with someone. In his office. And I don't think it's work-related. The room tilted. My mother was saying something to me, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. What are you talking about? I managed. I'm sorry. I thought you should know. Before the wedding. I'm so sorry. And then she hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. Sarah. Sweetie, what's wrong? My mother touched my arm. I looked at her. At Rachel. At my wedding dress hanging on the back of the door. I need to go to Marcus's office, I heard myself say. What? Now? The wedding is in 3 hours. I need to go. Right now. Rachel, bless her, didn't ask questions. She grabbed her keys. I'll drive you. We made some excuse to my mother about forgotten marriage license documents, and then Rachel and I were in her car, speeding toward downtown Portland. I called Ethan, who was getting ready at home with Marcus's brother. Hey, sweetie, can you meet me at your dad's office? I need to grab something before the ceremony. Mom, his voice was strained. Mom, don't go there. Why not? Just, please, don't. But I'd already made up my mind. I'll see you in 20 minutes, okay? He was quiet. Then, okay. I'm coming. Rachel dropped me off at the building entrance. Marcus's company, Tech Vista Solutions, occupied the 7th floor. I'd been there dozens of times for company parties, casual lunches. I knew the layout. I knew his office was at the end of the hall, corner office with windows overlooking the city. I took the elevator up, my hands shaking. The floor was mostly empty. It was Saturday, after all. But I could hear voices. Laughter. Coming from Marcus's office. I walked down the hallway in my jeans and t-shirt, hair half done in curlers, and I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body. Like this wasn't really happening. Like I'd wake up and laugh about this weird anxiety dream I'd had on my wedding day. But then I reached his office door, which was slightly ajar, and I heard her voice. Jennifer's voice. My colleague. My friend. The woman who'd helped me plan this goddamn wedding. We should probably wrap this up, she was saying, breathless, laughing. She's going to wonder where you are. And Marcus, she won't. She's too busy getting ready. She's been so focused on this wedding, she hasn't noticed anything for months. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I pushed the door open. They were standing by his desk. Not touching, but close. Too close. Jennifer's blouse was slightly askew. Marcus's tie was loosened. There was a moment where all three of us just froze, looking at each other. Jennifer's face went white. Sarah. Don't, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. Don't say my name. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Sarah, This isn't what it looks like. And that's when I heard the voice behind me. Mom. I turned. Ethan was standing in the hallway, and the look on his face broke me. Because it wasn't surprise. It wasn't confusion. It was resignation. Like he'd been expecting this. Like he'd known. I was going to confront Marcus right there. I was going to scream, demand answers, burn the world down. But Ethan walked up to me quickly, grabbed my hand, and whispered, Mom, I already knew. And it's worse than you think. The world stopped. Ethan pulled me back into the hallway, away from the office. We need to talk, he said quietly. But not here. Not now. Please, Mom. Trust me. I looked at my 12-year-old son, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Determination. And something else. Something that looked almost like protection. What do you mean, worse? I whispered. I mean you don't know the whole story, he said. And if you confront him now, you'll ruin everything. Everything's already ruined, I said, tears streaming down my face. No, Ethan said. It's not. But it will be if you don't let this play out the way it needs to. And that's when I realized my 12-year-old son wasn't just trying to comfort me. He was trying to protect me from something I didn't even know existed yet. I let Ethan pull me into the elevator. We rode down in silence while my brain tried and failed to process what I'd just seen. Jennifer. Marcus. Together. On the day I was supposed to marry him again. But it was Ethan's words that kept echoing in my head. Asterisk I already knew. And it's worse than you think. Asterisk. We walked out of the building into the grey Portland morning. The sky was threatening rain, which felt appropriate. Rachel was waiting by her car, and when she saw my face, she immediately came over. What happened? Can you take us somewhere? I asked. My voice sounded hollow. Anywhere but here. We ended up at a small park a few blocks away. Ethan and I sat on a bench while Rachel gave us space, pacing nearby with her phone, presumably texting people that the wedding might be delayed. Or cancelled. I couldn't think that far ahead yet. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. When had he grown up? When had he stopped being my little boy and become this person with secrets and strategies? Tell me what you know, I said. Ethan took a deep breath. He was wearing his suit for the wedding, navy blue, with a tie that matched Marcus's. He looked like a miniature businessman preparing to deliver bad news to a client. Dad's been cheating on you with Jennifer for 8 months, he said. 8 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. 8 months meant it started last August. While I was planning this wedding. While I was believing we could fix our marriage. How do you know? I whispered. I found out by accident in October, Ethan said. I came home early from school one day because I felt sick. Dad didn't know I was home. Jennifer was there. In our house, Mom. In your bedroom. I thought I might vomit. I heard them talking, Ethan continued. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking. They were laughing about something. And then they said things I'm not going to repeat to you. But I knew. I knew what was happening. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Not accusatory. Just broken. Because I didn't know what to do, Ethan said. I was scared. I thought maybe if I told you, you'd leave Dad, and I'd have to choose between you, and everything would fall apart. So I just watched. I started paying attention. And I realized it was bigger than just an affair. What do you mean, bigger? Ethan looked at me with those serious 12-year-old eyes. Mom, Jennifer's not just Dad's co-worker. She works at your firm. At Morrison and Associates. She's the paralegal who was hired 6 months before this whole thing started. I knew this already, obviously. Jennifer and I worked in different departments. She was in corporate law, I was in litigation, but we'd become friends over coffee breaks and shared lunch hours. She was 28, bright, ambitious. She'd even helped me with wedding planning. She specifically got hired there, Ethan said. I found emails. You found emails? How? Dad's laptop. He leaves it open sometimes. I started looking through his stuff after October. Ethan looked almost apologetic. I know it was wrong, but I had to know what was going on. If you've ever had a child surprise you with their capability, their strength in a crisis, then you know what I felt in that moment. Pride mixed with horror. This was my baby. My kid who still asked me to make him grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles. And he'd been conducting a covert investigation into his father's infidelity. And if you're watching this, feeling that same mixture of emotions, comment below, let me know what you're thinking. Because this is where the story gets complicated. This is where I stopped being just a betrayed wife and started becoming something else. Someone else. What did the emails say? I asked. Ethan pulled out his phone. I took screenshots. Lots of them. He swiped through, then handed me the phone. The first email was from Marcus to Jennifer, dated July of last year, a month before their affair apparently started. Asterisk subject, the plan asterisk. Asterisk I think we're ready to move forward. Sarah suspects nothing. She's so focused on the wedding idea that she won't see this coming until it's too late. Make sure you're getting close to her at work. We need her to trust you completely. Asterisk. I felt cold. So cold. Keep reading, Ethan said quietly. I scrolled to Jennifer's response. Asterisk I've already established a friendship with her. She talks to me about the marriage problems, about feeling disconnected from you. I'm playing the supportive co-worker role perfectly. She'll never suspect that I'm documenting everything she tells me. Asterisk. Documenting. I looked at Ethan. Why would she be documenting our conversations? Keep reading, he said again. The next email made my blood run cold. Asterisk Marcus to Jennifer asterisk. Asterisk the lawyer confirmed we have enough for grounds. Once the vow renewal happens and the joint accounts are consolidated, we'll have access to everything. Sarah's father's inheritance, the 401k, the Portland house. The timing has to be perfect. She signs the new trust documents at the wedding, thinking it's romantic estate planning, and then we file. Asterisk. File. File for what? And then I saw it. Attached to the email was a draft document. Asterisk petition for dissolution of marriage. Grounds. Adultery. Asterisk. They were going to claim I was having an affair. I looked up at Ethan, and he nodded. They're going to divorce you, Mom. And they're going to say you're the one who cheated. That's why Jennifer was documenting your conversations. She was trying to twist things you said to make it look like you were having an affair with someone at the firm. But I wasn't, I said stupidly. I never. I know, Ethan said. But they were going to make it look like you were. And because Jennifer works with you, because she's been your friend, her testimony would be credible. And Dad's lawyer said that if they could prove adultery, Dad would have leverage in the divorce settlement. He could potentially get more of the assets, maybe even primary custody of me. The world was spinning. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy. A calculated, long-term plan to destroy my life and take everything I had. The inheritance from my father, I said slowly. My dad had passed away 2 years ago and left me a substantial sum, nearly $500,000. It was in a separate account, technically mine, but Marcus had been pushing me to move it into a joint trust. He'd said it was for estate planning purposes, for Ethan's future. And like an idiot, I'd almost agreed. He wants your money, Ethan said. All of it. And he wants to make sure you're the bad guy so that no one questions it. I looked at my son, and I realized he'd been carrying this weight for months. Protecting me. Planning something. Why did you tell me to not confront him? I asked. Why did you say I'd ruin everything? Ethan's expression hardened. Because if you confront him now, he'll know we're onto him. He'll change his plan, hide the evidence, Maybe even accelerate the divorce filing before we have a chance to protect you. I've been talking to someone, Ethan said. Someone who can help.
Who?
Before he could answer, my phone rang. Marcus. I stared at the screen, his name flashing. The man I'd loved for 13 years. The man I'd built a life with. The man who was planning to destroy me. Don't answer it, Ethan said.
Not yet.
We need to be smart about this, Mom. We need to beat him at his own game. I looked at my 12-year-old son, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to just confront Marcus. I wasn't going to cry and demand explanations and let him spin more lies. I was going to take everything he tried to take from me, and I was going to make sure he regretted ever underestimating me. Okay, I said. Tell me the plan. And that's when Ethan smiled, just a little, and I saw a glimpse of the man he'd become. Strong, strategic, protective of the people he loved. First, he said, we're going to go through with the wedding. I stared at him. What? We need him to think everything's normal, Ethan explained. We need him to sign those trust documents, to consolidate the accounts like his planning, because that's actually going to work in our favor. I'll explain why later. But most importantly, we need to buy time. Time to gather more evidence. Time to build our case. Our case for what? Ethan looked at me seriously. To make sure that when this is over, you have everything. And he has nothing but his guilt. I should have been horrified that my 12-year-old was talking like this. But instead, I felt something else stirring inside me. Something dark and fierce and powerful. Hope. And rage. The perfect combination for revenge. Tell me everything, I said. Tell me who you've been talking to. Tell me what you need me to do. And as Ethan laid out the plan, a plan that was far more sophisticated than any 12-year-old should be capable of conceiving, I realized that somewhere along the way, my son had become my ally in ways I never could have imagined. The wedding was still happening. But it wasn't going to be a celebration. It was going to be the first move in a chess game that Marcus didn't even know he was playing. And this time, I was going to win. Rachel drove us back to the venue. In the car, I was silent, trying to process the absolute insanity of what Ethan had just told me. My son had been conducting a months-long investigation. He had evidence. He had a plan. And somehow, impossibly, that plan involved me going through with this wedding. Are you sure about this? Rachel asked me quietly. She'd heard enough of the conversation to understand the basics. Marcus was cheating. Jennifer was involved. It was a setup. Because if you want to call this whole thing off right now, I'll support you. We can pack up, go home, and deal with this however you need to. I looked at Ethan in the rearview mirror. He was staring out the window, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. No, I said. We're doing this. We're going through with the wedding. Rachel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Sarah. I know how it sounds. But Ethan's right. If I confront Marcus now, if I cancel this wedding, we lose any advantage we have. He'll scramble, hide evidence, change his strategy. But if I play along, if I act like everything's fine, we control the narrative. You're going to marry the man who's planning to ruin you. I'm already married to him, I said. This is just a vow renewal. A ceremony. And yes, I'm going to stand up there and say words I don't mean, and I'm going to smile, and I'm going to let him think he's winning. Because the thing about people who are planning to destroy you is that they get sloppy when they think they're already winning. We pulled up to the Rose Gardens. The parking lot was filling with guests. I could see my mother near the entrance, looking anxious and checking her watch. The venue was beautiful, exactly what I'd dreamed of. White chairs arranged in rows, an archway covered in roses and ivy, string lights waiting to twinkle when the sun set. It should have been perfect. Instead, it felt like walking onto a stage to perform the worst role of my life. What do you need me to do? Rachel asked. Be normal, I said. Act like nothing's wrong. If anyone asks why I left, tell them I had a minor panic attack and needed some air. And watch Jennifer. I want to know everything she does, everyone she talks to. Rachel nodded. Consider it done. Ethan and I got out of the car. As we walked toward the bridal suite, he said quietly, "Mom, I'm proud of you." I looked down at him, this child who'd grown up too fast in the past few months. I should be saying that to you. We're going to get through this, he said. Together. In the bridal suite, my mother descended on me immediately. Sarah, where have you been? We have less than 2 hours. Your hair isn't done. Your makeup needs touching up. I'm sorry, Mom. I just needed a moment. Wedding jitters. She studied my face. My mother was no fool. She'd been through her own share of life's darkness, a difficult divorce from my father years before he passed, financial struggles, health scares. She knew what real pain looked like. Is everything all right? She asked softly. I forced a smile. Everything's perfect. Let's make me a bride. For the next 90 minutes, I went through the motions. Hair styled in soft waves. Makeup applied to hide the fact that I'd been crying. The ivory dress slipped on, zipped up, adjusted. My mother fussed with the lace sleeves. Rachel helped with my jewelry, simple pearl earrings, my grandmother's bracelet. In the mirror, I looked like a bride. Happy, excited, hopeful. Inside, I felt like I was preparing for war. At 1:30, there was a knock at the door. Sarah, you about ready? Marcus's voice. My heart slammed against my ribs. In that moment, I almost broke. I almost threw open the door and screamed at him, told him I knew everything, destroyed the charade. But then I felt Ethan's hand squeeze mine. He'd been sitting quietly in the corner, watching me get ready. Now he stood next to me, and I drew strength from him. Almost. I called out, my voice steady. See you out there. You look beautiful, Marcus said through the door. I can't wait to see you. Liar. The word echoed in my head. Liar, liar, liar. At 1:55, the ceremony began. I stood at the entrance to the garden, my arm looped through my uncle's. He was walking me down the aisle since my father was gone. The music started. Canon in D. I'd chosen it because it felt timeless and romantic. Now it felt like a funeral march. I walked down the aisle, past rows of friends and family, all smiling and dabbing at their eyes. And at the end, standing under the archway of roses, was Marcus. He wore a charcoal suit, a light blue tie. He was handsome, in that tech guy way, tall, lean, with wire-rimmed glasses and dark hair that was just starting to grey at the temples. He was smiling at me with what looked like genuine emotion. Next to him was his best man, his brother David. And on my side of the archway were my bridesmaids, Rachel, my cousin Melissa, and Jennifer. Jennifer, in a soft pink dress, holding a bouquet, looking at me with what appeared to be happy tears in her eyes. I wanted to launch myself at her. I wanted to expose her right there in front of everyone. But instead, I took my place next to Marcus, handed my bouquet to Jennifer, the irony was not lost on me, and looked into my husband's eyes. The officiant began speaking. Some generic speech about love and commitment and second chances. I barely heard it. I was too focused on keeping my expression neutral, on not letting the rage show. Then came the vows. Marcus went first. He took my hands, and he looked at me with such apparent sincerity that if I didn't know better, I would have believed him. Sarah, he said, 11 years ago, we promised to love each other forever. We were young, maybe a little reckless, but we knew what we felt was real. Over the years, we've grown together, built a life, raised an incredible son. And I know there have been times when we've struggled, when we've felt disconnected. But standing here today, renewing these vows, I want you to know that I am more committed to you now than I was back then. You are my partner, my best friend, my home. I promise to honor you, to support you, to love you for the rest of my life. The audience made soft sounds of appreciation. A few people were definitely crying. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. Then it was my turn. And here's where things get interesting, because if you're watching this and you've ever had to lie to someone's face while your heart is breaking, hit that like button. Because what I did next was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever done. I looked at Marcus, and I spoke from a place of truth, just not the truth he thought I was speaking. Marcus, I said, my voice steady, when we got married 11 years ago, I thought I knew what love was. I thought it was romance and excitement and grand gestures. But over the years, I've learned that love is something different. It's showing up every day, even when it's hard. It's being honest, even when the truth is painful. It's choosing your partner over and over again, even when other options might seem easier. I paused, and I saw something flicker in Marcus's eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or guilt. Good. Today, I'm choosing you again, I continued. Not because I'm naive, and not because I haven't seen the cracks in our foundation, but because I believe that real love means facing those cracks honestly and deciding what to do about them. So I promise you this, I will honor our vows. I will be truthful. And I will make sure that whatever happens between us, Ethan is protected and loved. I saw Rachel give me a subtle nod. She understood. I wasn't promising to love Marcus. I was promising to protect my son and myself, and I was promising to be truthful, just not yet. The officiant asked for the rings. Ethan stepped forward with a ring pillow, and as he handed Marcus my ring, he gave his father a look that could have frozen hell. Marcus didn't notice. But I did. The rings were exchanged. The officiant pronounced us, well, nothing really, since we were already married, but he said something about our renewed commitment. And then came the words I was dreading. You may kiss the bride. Marcus leaned in, and I let him kiss me. His lips on mine felt foreign, like kissing a stranger. I counted the seconds, 1, 2, 3, until it was over. The audience erupted in applause. Marcus and I turned to face them, his arm around my waist, both of us smiling. The perfect couple, renewing their love. And then I saw her. Jennifer, in the bridesmaid lineup, wiping her eyes and smiling so brightly. Looking at Marcus with such barely concealed longing that I almost laughed at the audacity. The reception was held in a tent on the grounds. Dinner, dancing, speeches. I played my part flawlessly. I smiled, I hugged guests, I cut the cake with Marcus's hand over mine on the knife. I danced with him to our song, The Way You Look Tonight, and I let him hold me close while he whispered in my ear about how beautiful I looked, how much he loved me. All lies. Every word. But I was lying too. And I was better at it than he was. During the reception, Ethan pulled me aside briefly. There's someone I want you to meet, he said. But not here. Tomorrow. Can you meet me at Riverside Park at 10 in the morning? Who is it? The person who's been helping me. The person who's going to make sure Dad doesn't win. Before I could ask more questions, Marcus appeared at my side. Hey, buddy, can I steal my wife for a minute? Ethan gave me a quick look, stay calm, and then walked away. Marcus led me outside the tent, to a quieter corner of the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It should have been romantic. I need to talk to you about something, Marcus said. My heart rate picked up. Did he know? Had he figured out that I'd been at his office? What is it? I asked, keeping my voice light. The trust documents. The estate planning stuff we talked about. Yes. The lawyer is here. I invited him as a guest, and he brought the papers. I thought maybe we could sign them tonight, as part of the celebration. Symbolic, you know? Protecting our family's future on the day we renew our commitment. There it was. The trap. The thing Ethan had warned me about. And instead of running, I was going to walk right into it. Because Ethan had a plan. And I trusted my son more than I'd ever trusted Marcus again. That's a wonderful idea, I said, smiling. Let's do it. Marcus's expression was relieved, triumphant even.
Really? You're sure?
Absolutely. Where do we sign? He led me to a table where a man in his 50s was waiting with a leather portfolio. Marcus introduced him as Richard Grayson, his estate attorney. We sat down, and Richard walked us through the documents. It was exactly as Ethan had described. We were consolidating our assets into a joint trust. My inheritance from my father, our retirement accounts, the house, everything. Equal ownership, equal access. Or at least, that's what the documents said. I signed every page without hesitation. And I watched Marcus relax, thinking he'd won. What he didn't know was that earlier that day, before the wedding, Ethan had made a phone call that would change everything. But I wouldn't find out about that until the next morning. For now, I danced with Marcus until midnight. I laughed at jokes. I threw my bouquet. Jennifer caught it, of course, and everyone cheered while I wanted to set something on fire. And when the night finally ended, when Marcus and I went back to our hotel room, separate from the house, part of the wedding experience, I pleaded exhaustion and took the bathroom, where I finally allowed myself to break down. I sat on the floor of that expensive hotel bathroom in my wedding dress, mascara streaming down my face, and I cried silently for the life I'd thought I had. For the man I'd thought I'd married. For the trust I'd given so freely and had been betrayed so completely. But then I thought about Ethan. About his bravery, his strategic mind, his protection of me. And I thought about revenge. Not the hot, impulsive kind, but the cold, calculated kind that takes time and planning and perfect execution. I wiped my face. I stood up. I looked at myself in the mirror. You can do this, I whispered. You're stronger than he thinks. And you're going to win. And for the first time that day, I believed it. I barely slept that night. Marcus fell asleep quickly, the satisfied sleep of a man who thinks he's gotten away with something, while I lay awake in the darkness, my mind racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jennifer's face at the wedding, Marcus's hands on my waist during our dance, the trust documents with my signature on them. I'd walked right into their trap, exactly as they'd planned. Except, if Ethan was right, it wasn't a trap at all. It was the beginning of their downfall. I had to believe that. I had to trust my 12-year-old son's plan, even though every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to protect myself, to get as far away from Marcus as possible. At 6 a.m, I gave up on sleep. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Marcus, and went into the bathroom. In the mirror, I looked like hell. Dark circles under my eyes, skin pale, hair a mess. The bride from yesterday was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away the feeling of Marcus's hands on me from our wedding night. He'd tried to initiate intimacy after we got back to the room, and I'd feigned exhaustion and a headache. He'd been surprisingly understanding, which probably meant he was getting his needs met elsewhere. The thought made me physically ill. By 7:30, I was dressed in jeans and a sweater, looking more like myself. Marcus was still asleep. I left him a note saying I was meeting Rachel for post-wedding brunch and that I'd be back by noon. Then I drove to Riverside Park, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. The park was quiet on a Sunday morning. A few joggers, some people walking dogs, but mostly empty. I found Ethan waiting on a bench near the river, and next to him was a woman I didn't recognize. She was probably in her late 50s, with silver-gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a pantsuit that screamed professional. She had kind eyes but a firm set to her jaw, the look of someone who'd seen a lot and wasn't easily shocked. "Mom," Ethan said, standing up as I approached. "This is Margaret Torres. She's a forensic accountant and private investigator." I stared at him, then at her. A forensic accountant? "Ethan, where did you find?" Margaret smiled slightly. "Your son is remarkably resourceful. He contacted my office about 3 months ago, claiming he needed help with a school project about financial fraud. When I spoke with him, I realized very quickly that this wasn't about school." 3 months ago. I looked at Ethan. You've been planning this for 3 months. I needed help, Ethan said simply. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I found Ms. Torres's website, and she specializes in uncovering hidden assets and financial fraud in divorce cases. I told her everything, showed her the emails I'd found, and she agreed to help. Pro bono, Margaret added. When a 12-year-old calls you with evidence of a conspiracy to defraud his mother, you pay attention. I have a son about Ethan's age. I couldn't imagine him having to deal with something like this. So I took the case. I sat down on the bench, my legs suddenly weak. What exactly have you been doing for 3 months? Margaret pulled out a tablet from her bag. Investigating your husband and Jennifer Reeves. And let me tell you, Sarah, what they've been planning is significantly worse than you think. I felt cold despite the warm morning sun. Tell me. Margaret swiped through her tablet, pulling up documents, bank statements, email threads. Let's start with Jennifer. Her real name is Jennifer Reeves, but 5 years ago, she went by Jenny Reeves Chen. Chen. My brain stuttered. Like Marcus's last name. Exactly like it. Because Jennifer is Marcus's first cousin. The world tilted. What? Marcus's uncle, his father's brother, married a woman named Patricia Reeves. They had one daughter, Jennifer. The families were close when Marcus and Jennifer were growing up, but there was a falling out about 15 years ago over some inheritance dispute. The families stopped speaking. But Marcus and Jennifer, they stayed in touch. Very close touch. I felt like I was going to be sick. They're cousins. First cousins. Yes. And they've been romantically involved for years. Long before Marcus met you. My mind was reeling. But he married me. We have a son together. You have resources, Margaret said bluntly. Your father was a successful real estate developer. When Marcus married you, you were 23 and had just inherited a modest trust fund from your grandmother. It's grown substantially over the years, especially after your father's death. Marcus saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To have his cake and eat it too. Marry you for financial security and access to your family's wealth, while maintaining his relationship with Jennifer on the side. And when your father died 2 years ago and left you nearly $500,000, Marcus saw a chance to cash out. File for divorce, take as much as he could, and ride off into the sunset with Jennifer. I thought I might throw up. But why the elaborate setup? Why frame me for adultery? Because Oregon is an equitable distribution state, Margaret explained. In a standard divorce, assets are divided fairly, but not necessarily equally. However, if one party can prove the other committed adultery or some other misconduct, it can affect the division of assets and spousal support. Marcus's lawyer told him that if he could prove you were having an affair, he could potentially get a larger share of the marital assets, including portions of your inheritance that have been commingled with marital funds over the years. But I wasn't having an affair, I said helplessly. That's where Jennifer came in. She specifically got hired at your firm 11 months ago. She befriended you, gained your trust, and started documenting your conversations. She was twisting innocent statements you made, maybe about feeling lonely, or about a male colleague being attractive, or about feeling disconnected from Marcus, and she was preparing to testify that you'd confessed to an affair. But that's perjury. That's fraud. It is. But it's hard to prove, especially when the person testifying is a seemingly credible colleague who's been your friend. It would be her word against yours, and combined with Marcus's testimony and whatever circumstantial evidence they could manufacture, it might have been enough to tip the scales in his favor. I looked at Ethan. My brave, brilliant, protective son. How did you figure all this out? I didn't, he admitted. Not all of it. I just knew something was really wrong. After I saw Dad and Jennifer together in October, I started watching them. I followed Dad one day, on my bike, he didn't notice me, and I saw him meet Jennifer at a coffee shop. They were holding hands, Mom. Kissing. and they were talking about the plan. That's when I knew I needed help. Margaret took over. Ethan brought me the emails he'd found. I started investigating, and I uncovered the family connection between Marcus and Jennifer. Once I had that, things started falling into place. I subpoenaed phone records, bank accounts, credit card statements. Wait, you subpoenaed records?
How?
Don't you need a court order? I have contacts, Margaret said diplomatically, and I'm very good at what I do. The point is, I found evidence of their relationship going back 7 years. Hotel rooms, romantic trips, money transfers. Marcus has been funneling money to Jennifer for years, small amounts at first, but larger sums in the last 18 months. She pulled up a bank statement on her tablet. This is an account in Marcus's name that you probably don't know about. He's been depositing money here regularly and then transferring it to Jennifer. Over the past 2 years, he's moved nearly $80,000 to her. $80,000. Money that should have been going to our family, to Ethan's college fund, to our future. Instead, it was funding Marcus's relationship with his cousin. There's more, Margaret said. The trust documents you signed yesterday? They were designed to consolidate all your assets into a joint account that Marcus would have equal access to. What you didn't know is that Marcus has been working with his lawyer to file for divorce immediately after the wedding.
How immediately?
We estimate within the next 2 weeks. He wanted to make sure the trust was established and your inheritance was fully accessible first. Then he'd file, claim you'd been unfaithful, and push for an expedited divorce. With Jennifer's testimony and the evidence she'd gathered, he'd argue for a larger share of the assets. Plus, he'd push for primary custody of Ethan, which would mean child support payments from you to him. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and fierce. He was going to take my son. He was going to try, Margaret said. But here's where things get interesting. Because you signed those trust documents yesterday, and because Marcus thinks he's gotten sloppy. He's about to make moves that we can track, document, and use against him. What kind of moves? We expect him to start transferring money out of the joint trust soon. Not all of it, that would be too obvious. But significant amounts, probably to accounts he's set up under business entities or in Jennifer's name. He'll do it before he files for divorce, thinking he's securing the money. But every transfer he makes is evidence of fraud and financial misconduct. Ethan spoke up. That's why I told you to sign the papers, Mom. We need him to think he's winning so he'll make mistakes. I looked at my son, and I felt a surge of love and pride so intense it almost hurt. You've been protecting me this whole time. Someone had to, he said quietly. You were so focused on fixing the marriage, on making the wedding perfect, that you didn't see what was happening. I had to do something. I pulled him into a hug, and he let me hold him for a moment before pulling back, slightly embarrassed. So what's the plan? I asked Margaret. Because I signed those documents. I gave him access to everything. How do we protect my assets now? Margaret smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd cornered her prey. We let him take the bait. We monitor every transaction he makes. We document every conversation between him and Jennifer. And when he finally files for divorce thinking he's got everything locked down, we hit him with evidence of fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, and perjury. We can prove all that. We can. I've been building this case for 3 months. I have financial records, emails, text messages, even recordings. Recordings. Ethan looked slightly guilty. I put a recording app on Dad's phone. He doesn't know. Every call he makes, every conversation he has with Jennifer, it's recorded and backed up to a cloud server. I should have been concerned about the legality of that, but in that moment, I was just grateful. Is that legal? Oregon is a one-party consent state for recordings, Margaret said. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal. Ethan, as a member of your household, had authority to install monitoring software on family devices. It was a stretch, legally speaking, but I wasn't going to argue. What do I do now? I asked. Do I confront Marcus? Do I leave him? No, Margaret said firmly. You go home. You act normal. You act like the happy newlywed who just renewed her vows. You give Marcus no reason to suspect that you know anything. Can you do that? I thought about pretending to love the man who'd betrayed me so completely. Sleeping in the same bed with him. Acting like everything was fine while he plotted to destroy me. I can do it, I said. And I meant it. Because here's what Marcus and Jennifer didn't understand. I wasn't the naive woman they thought I was. I wasn't the trusting wife who would just accept whatever they told me. I was a mother protecting her son. I was a woman who'd been pushed too far. And I was done playing defense. There's one more thing, Margaret said. Jennifer's not just Marcus's accomplice. She has her own motivations here. I've been digging into her background, and there's something you need to know about why she targeted you specifically. What do you mean, targeted me? Jennifer didn't just happen to apply for a job at your firm. She researched you, Sarah. She knew who you were, who your father was, what you were worth. And she chose to work at Morrison & Associates specifically because you worked there. This whole thing, her friendship with you, her affair with Marcus, the plan to frame you, it's personal. But why? I'd never even met her before she started at the firm. Because 15 years ago, when there was that family falling out between Marcus's side and Jennifer's side, it was about your family. Your father was involved in a real estate deal with Marcus's uncle, Jennifer's father. The deal went bad, and Jennifer's father lost a lot of money. He blamed your father, claimed he'd been defrauded. Your father denied it, said it was just a bad investment. The family split, and Jennifer's father never recovered financially. He died 5 years ago, essentially broke. The pieces started falling into place. So this is revenge? Jennifer blames my family for her father's financial problems. Exactly. And when she found out Marcus had married into your family, she saw an opportunity. She reconnected with him, rekindled their relationship, and together they came up with this plan. She gets to hurt the daughter of the man she blames for her father's downfall, and Marcus gets your money. It's a win-win for them. I sat there on that park bench, the morning sun warming my face, and I felt something click into place inside me. This wasn't just about a cheating husband and an opportunistic mistress. This was about years of resentment, of planned revenge, of two people who decided I was an acceptable casualty in their quest for money and retribution. And they'd underestimated me. Both of them. So we let them play their hand, I said slowly. We let Marcus start moving money. We let Jennifer continue thinking she's got me fooled. And we build our case until it's ironclad. Exactly, Margaret said. I estimate we have about 2 weeks before Marcus files. In that time, we'll gather every piece of evidence we need. And then we'll file first. File for what? Divorce, on grounds of adultery and fraud. We'll also file criminal complaints for embezzlement and conspiracy. And we'll sue for full custody of Ethan, with Marcus getting supervised visitation at best. Can we win that? Margaret looked at me seriously. Sarah, by the time I'm done, Marcus won't just lose the divorce. He'll potentially face criminal charges. Jennifer too. They thought they were playing chess. But they're actually just pawns, and they don't even know it yet. I looked at Ethan, who was watching me with those serious eyes. Are you okay with all this? I know it's your father. He stopped being my father when he decided to hurt you, Ethan said. His voice was hard, older than his years. I'm with you, Mom. All the way. If you're watching this and you've ever had someone stand by you when the world was falling apart, drop a comment below. Tell me about that person. Because in that moment, sitting in that park with my son and a private investigator I'd met 5 minutes ago, I felt less alone than I had in years. We spent the next hour going over the details. Margaret showed me how to document everything, how to act normal without raising suspicion, what to watch for. She gave me a phone number to call if anything urgent happened. She promised to continue monitoring Marcus's accounts and communications. And then she said something that stayed with me. Sarah, revenge isn't about hurting people. It's about justice. It's about making sure that people who try to destroy others face consequences. Marcus and Jennifer made a choice to betray you, to conspire against you, to try to take everything you'd built. Now they're going to face the consequences of that choice. That's not revenge. That's accountability. I liked the sound of that. Accountability. I drove home to Marcus, who was awake and making breakfast, humming to himself. He kissed me when I walked in, asked about brunch with Rachel, a brunch that never happened, and told me how happy he was about yesterday. It was perfect, he said. You were perfect. I'm so glad we did this. I smiled and kissed him back. Me too. And I meant it. Because yesterday had been perfect, just not in the way he thought. It was the day I'd signed the documents that would eventually lead to his downfall. It was the day I'd learned my son was a warrior. It was the day I'd stopped being a victim and became something else entirely. The game had begun. And I was going to win. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Not because I was sad or heartbroken, though I was both of those things, but because I had to be someone I wasn't. I had to be the loving wife, the happy newlywed, the trusting partner. All while knowing exactly what kind of man I was married to. Every morning, I woke up next to Marcus and forced myself to smile. Every evening, I made dinner and asked about his day like I cared. Every night, I endured his touch, his kisses, his presence in our bed, and I pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was watching, learning, gathering evidence. Margaret had given me access to a secure app on my phone that tracked all the monitoring she was doing. I could see Marcus's location in real time, updated every 5 minutes. I could read transcripts of his phone calls and text messages. I could view his bank transactions as they happened. It was invasive and probably crossed a dozen ethical lines, but I told myself it was necessary. Marcus had forfeited his right to privacy when he decided to destroy me. The first major transaction happened 3 days after the wedding. I was at work, sitting at my desk reviewing case files, when my phone buzzed with an alert from Margaret's app. Asterisk transaction alert. $25,000 transferred from joint trust to account ending in 7834 asterisk. I opened the app and saw the details. Marcus had moved $25,000 from our newly consolidated trust account to an account I'd never heard of. The account belonged to something called Apex Consulting LLC. I texted Margaret immediately, asterisk what's Apex Consulting, asterisk. Her response came within minutes, asterisk shell company. Registered to Marcus 3 months ago. He's been planning this for a while. This is good. It's evidence of fraudulent transfer of marital assets. Asterisk. Good. My husband stealing our money was good. I had to remind myself that every crime Marcus committed now was ammunition for later. At home that evening, Marcus was cheerful. We ate dinner, pasta carbonara, his favorite, and he talked about work, about a project launch, about plans for Ethan's upcoming birthday. He was so normal, so convincing, that if I hadn't known better, I would have believed him. After dinner, while Marcus was in the shower, I checked his laptop. Ethan had showed me the password. Marcus wasn't clever enough to change it regularly, and I pulled up his email. There were new messages from Jennifer. My stomach turned as I read them. Asterisk Jennifer, can't wait for this to be over. 2 more weeks and we're free. Asterisk. Asterisk Marcus, I know, baby. Just have to keep up the act a little longer. She suspects nothing. Asterisk. Asterisk Jennifer, are you sure? She seemed weird at the wedding. Like she knew something. Asterisk. Asterisk Marcus, she doesn't know anything. She's too trusting. Always has been. That's why this worked so well. Asterisk. I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from screaming. Baby. He called her baby. And he was laughing about how trusting I was, how easy I'd been to fool. But there was more. An email from his lawyer, Richard Grayson. Asterisk Richard. Divorce papers are ready to file. I've drafted them with grounds for adultery as discussed. Jennifer's affidavit is prepared and notarized. We can file as early as next Monday. Make sure the final asset transfers are complete by then. Asterisk. Next Monday. That was 11 days away. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Margaret. Then I closed the laptop and went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. When Marcus came out of the shower, towel around his waist, I was sitting on the bed pretending to read a book. "You okay?" he asked. "You seem quiet tonight." "Just tired," I said. "Long day at work." He sat next to me, and I forced myself not to flinch when he put his arm around me. "We should do something fun this weekend. Maybe take Ethan to the coast? Just the three of us." "That sounds nice," I said, even though the idea of spending a weekend pretending to be a happy family made me want to scream. "I love you, Sarah," Marcus said, kissing my temple. "I know I don't say it enough, but I do. You and Ethan are everything to me." I turned to look at him, and I saw no guilt in his eyes. No remorse. Just smooth, practiced sincerity. "I love you too," I lied. At work, things were equally surreal. Jennifer was there every day, of course, just a few offices down from mine. She'd stop by my desk regularly, asking how married life was treating me, complimenting my wedding photos, suggesting we have lunch together. I said yes to lunch. I had to. I had to keep her thinking we were friends, that she'd fooled me completely. We went to our usual spot, a small cafe 2 blocks from the firm. Jennifer ordered a salad. I got a sandwich I couldn't taste. We sat at a window table, and she smiled at me like we were best friends. "So," she said, "how's everything going? You and Marcus seem really happy." "We are," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "The wedding was perfect. I'm so glad we did it." "You deserve to be happy," Jennifer said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You're one of the kindest people I know, Sarah. I'm glad Marcus appreciates you." The audacity. The sheer, brazen audacity of this woman. She was sleeping with my husband, planning to testify that I was an adulteress, and she was sitting here telling me I deserved happiness. "Thank you," I managed. "That means a lot." "I actually wanted to talk to you about something," Jennifer said, her expression shifting to concern. "It's kind of awkward, but I feel like I should mention it." Here it comes, I thought. This is where she plants the seeds of her false testimony. "What is it?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "It's about Todd," she said. "Todd Stevens was a senior partner at the firm, someone I worked with regularly. I've noticed him paying a lot of attention to you lately, lingering in your office, finding excuses to talk to you. I wanted to make sure you knew people might notice." There it was. The beginning of her fabricated affair story. She was establishing that I'd been the subject of another man's attention, laying groundwork for her later claims that I'd been having an affair with Todd. The real truth was that Todd was a 60-year-old married man with grandchildren who'd never looked at me twice. But Jennifer was setting up her narrative. I played along. "Oh, I hadn't really thought about it. Todd's just being friendly, I think. He's like that with everyone." "I'm sure," Jennifer said, but her tone suggested she didn't believe me. "I just wanted to mention it. You know how people talk. And now that you and Marcus just renewed your vows, you don't want any rumors starting." "You're right," I said. "Thanks for looking out for me." She smiled. "That's what friends are for." I wanted to throw my coffee in her face. Instead, I smiled back and changed the subject to something innocuous, a case she was working on, some firm gossip. We finished lunch, and she hugged me goodbye before we walked back to the office. As soon as I was alone, I called Margaret. "She's building her false testimony," I told her. "She just planted a seed about me and a senior partner." "I expected this," Margaret said. "She's creating witnesses, even if those witnesses don't know they're being used." Someone at the firm might remember seeing Todd talk to you, and Jennifer will twist that into evidence of an affair. So what do? Document everything. Every interaction with Todd, every conversation with Jennifer. Keep a journal, dates, times, what was said. And be more visible with your work relationships. Make sure there are other witnesses who can testify that your relationships with colleagues are professional. I started the journal that night. Every detail I could remember from the past few weeks, every interaction with Todd, every lunch with Jennifer. I dated each entry and backed it up to a cloud server that Marcus couldn't access. If Jennifer wanted to play the witness game, I'd have witnesses too. The second major transaction happened a week after the first. This time, it was $30,000, moved to a different account. Margaret tracked it to an investment account in Jennifer's name. He's funneling money to her, Margaret explained during one of our secret calls. I'd driven to a parking lot near the river, the only place I felt safe having these conversations. He's trying to secure assets before the divorce filing. It's classic financial fraud in divorce cases. Can we stop him? Not yet. If we intervene now, he'll know we're onto him. We need to let him continue until we have enough evidence to prove a pattern. A single transfer could be explained away. Multiple transfers over time shows intent and planning. How much more is he going to steal? Based on his account activity, I estimate he'll move another $50,000 to $75,000 before he files. Maybe more. I felt sick. That was my father's money. Money my dad had worked his entire life to earn. Money he'd left to me to provide security for Ethan and me. And Marcus was giving it to his cousin lover like it meant nothing. We'll get it back, Margaret promised. Every penny. Plus damages. But you have to trust the process, Sarah. Trust. That word again. I trusted Marcus, and look where that got me. But I didn't have a choice. I had to trust Margaret. I had to trust Ethan's plan. So I went home and smiled at my husband and acted like everything was fine. Ethan was my anchor through all of this. Every few days, he'd find a moment to check in with me, usually when Marcus was out or distracted. We'd go for walks, or sit in his room, and he'd ask how I was holding up. I'm okay, I'd tell him. This is hard, but I'm okay. You're doing great, Mom, he'd say. And hearing that from my 12-year-old son gave me strength I didn't know I had. One evening, about 10 days after the wedding, Ethan and I were making cookies in the kitchen. Marcus was upstairs on a work call, probably talking to Jennifer, though he claimed it was about a project deadline. Mom, Ethan said quietly, measuring flour into a bowl. There's something else you should know. My heart sank. What? Dad's been talking about moving. He told Jennifer that after the divorce, they're going to relocate to California. He's already applied for jobs there. California. 3 states away from Ethan's school, his friends, his life. He wants to take you with him. I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He wants custody, Ethan said. He thinks if he can prove you had an affair, he'll get primary custody and you'll have to pay him child support. Then he and Jennifer will move to California with me. I felt rage building in my chest. That's not going to happen. I know, Ethan said. Because when this is over, I'm staying with you. That's not even a question. Ethan, you know that might not be your choice, right? The court decides. I'm 12, Ethan interrupted. I'm old enough to tell the court what I want. And I want to live with you. I'll tell them everything, about finding Dad and Jennifer together, about the recordings, about his plan. The court will listen to me. I hugged him, this brave boy who'd been forced to grow up too fast. You shouldn't have to do this. You shouldn't have to choose between your parents. Dad made the choice for me, Ethan said simply. He chose money and Jennifer over us. So I'm choosing you. That night, after Marcus finally came to bed, I lay awake thinking about Ethan's words. My son was prepared to testify against his father. A 12-year-old willing to stand in court and detail his father's betrayal. It shouldn't have to come to that. But if it did, I knew Ethan would be strong enough. I just hoped I would be too. By the end of the second week, Margaret had documented over $70,000 in fraudulent transfers. Marcus had moved money into shell accounts, investment accounts in Jennifer's name, and even a cryptocurrency wallet that he thought was untraceable. But Margaret was better than Marcus gave her credit for. She tracked every transaction, documented every account, compiled every piece of evidence into a file that was growing thicker by the day. "We're almost ready," she told me during one of our parking lot phone calls. "He's supposed to file for divorce on Monday. I think we should file first."
When?
"Friday. 3 days from now. We'll file for divorce, for emergency custody, and we'll simultaneously file criminal complaints for fraud and embezzlement. We'll hit him from every direction before he knows what's happening." 3 days. I had 3 more days of pretending, of lying, of sleeping next to the man who destroyed everything we'd built. "Okay," I said. "What do I need to do?" "Come to my office tomorrow. We'll go over everything, prepare all the paperwork, and make sure you're ready. This is going to get ugly, Sarah. Marcus will fight back. He'll deny everything, claim we're lying, probably try to turn this around on you. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about everything I'd endured the past 2 weeks. The lies, the betrayal, the humiliation of watching my husband plan my destruction. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's end this." That night at dinner, Marcus was in an especially good mood. He'd opened a bottle of wine, expensive, from a case we'd been saving for special occasions, and he toasted to our future. "To us," he said, raising his glass. "To the next chapter." I clinked my glass against his. "To the next chapter," I echoed. We drank, and I watched him smile, completely oblivious to the fact that his next chapter was going to be written in a courtroom. If you're watching this and you've ever had to smile in the face of someone who's betrayed you, who's plotted against you, who's underestimated you, leave a comment. Tell me how it felt. Because in that moment, drinking wine with Marcus and pretending to celebrate our future, I felt powerful. I felt like a coiled snake, waiting to strike. And in 3 days, I would. Friday morning dawned grey and drizzly, typical Pacific Northwest weather. I woke up at 5:30, my heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and adrenaline. Today was the day. After 2 weeks of surveillance, documentation, and perfect acting, today was the day I would stop being Marcus's victim and become his opponent. Marcus was still asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his face, breathing deeply. I looked at him in the dim morning light and tried to remember when I'd loved him, when his presence had made me feel safe instead of sick. But I couldn't access those memories anymore. They felt like they belonged to a different person, a different life. I slipped out of bed quietly and went downstairs. Ethan was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal. He looked up when I entered, and I saw the same nervous energy in his eyes that I felt. "Today?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Today." "Are you scared?" "Terrified," I admitted. "But also, ready. Does that make sense?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "It does." We sat together in silence for a few minutes, and then I heard Marcus moving around upstairs. Showtime. I made coffee, started breakfast, played the role of loving wife one more time. Marcus came down wearing his work clothes, khakis and a button-down, his usual office uniform, and kissed me on the cheek. "Morning. Beautiful. You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said, which was true. "I have a busy day at work." Also true, just not in the way he thought. Marcus grabbed a cup of coffee and his briefcase. "I've got back-to-back meetings today, so I might be late tonight. Don't wait up if I'm not home by 8. Back-to-back meetings. Right. More likely he was meeting with Jennifer and his lawyer, finalizing his plans to file for divorce on Monday. "No problem," I said. "Ethan and I will figure out dinner." He kissed me again. I forced myself not to flinch, and headed out. I watched through the window as he got in his car and drove away, completely oblivious to the fact that his entire world was about to implode. As soon as his car was out of sight, I turned to Ethan. I need to get to Margaret's office. Are you okay going to school today? Actually, Ethan said, I was thinking I'd stay home sick. I want to be here when Dad finds out. I should have said no. He should have been at school, protected from the fallout. But I understood the impulse. This was his fight too. Okay, I said. But you stay here, in the house. Let me handle the confrontation. Deal. I drove to Margaret's office, a small suite in a professional building downtown. She was waiting for me with what looked like a small library's worth of documents spread across her conference table. Ready? She asked. Ready. We spent the next 2 hours going over everything. The divorce petition, which cited Marcus's adultery and financial fraud as grounds. The emergency custody motion, which argued that Marcus was an unfit parent who had engaged in behavior detrimental to Ethan's well-being. The criminal complaints for embezzlement and fraud, complete with all of Margaret's documentation of the money transfers. This is ironclad, Margaret said, organizing the documents into neat piles. Everything is documented, time-stamped, and traceable. Marcus can't talk his way out of this. What about Jennifer? I asked. What happens to her? She'll face criminal charges too, conspiracy to commit fraud, potentially perjury for the false affidavit she prepared. Plus, she'll likely lose her job at Morrison & Associates. The firm won't keep her on once this becomes public. Good. I felt a flash of vindictive satisfaction at the thought of Jennifer's carefully constructed plans crumbling around her. And the money he transferred? I asked. We're filing for immediate asset freeze and recovery. The court will order Marcus to return every penny, plus interest and penalties. He'll also be responsible for all legal fees, yours and his. Margaret pulled out one more document. This is a restraining order. Given the financial fraud and the conspiracy, we're arguing that Marcus poses a threat to your financial security and potentially your physical safety. The restraining order will require him to stay away from you, from the house, and from Ethan except for supervised visitation. Will the court grant it? With this evidence? Absolutely. I've already contacted Judge Morrison, no relation to your firm, different spelling. She's known for taking financial fraud in divorce cases very seriously. She's agreed to hear our emergency motions this afternoon. This afternoon. In just a few hours, Marcus would be served with divorce papers, criminal complaints, and a restraining order. His entire life would implode before dinner time. What do I do now? I asked. You go to work. Act normal. The process server will deliver the papers to Marcus at his office around 2 o'clock. I'll be filing everything with the court at 1, so by the time he's served, it'll all be official. Once he's served, you'll get a notification on your phone. At that point, you should leave work and go home to be with Ethan. Marcus will likely try to come home, but the restraining order will prevent that. If he shows up anyway, you call the police. What about Jennifer? She'll be served separately, also around 2. We're hitting them both at the same time so they can't warn each other or coordinate a response. Margaret handed me a thick envelope. This is your copy of everything. Keep it somewhere safe. And Sarah, today is going to be hard. Marcus will call you, text you, probably show up at your work if he can. Do not engage. Do not try to explain or defend yourself. Just refer him to your attorney, which is me, and walk away. I took the envelope, and my hands were shaking. Thank you, I said. For everything. For helping Ethan. For believing us. Margaret smiled, and it was warm and genuine. That's what I do. I help people fight back against those who try to destroy them. Now go to work, keep your head down, and let the system do what it's supposed to do. I drove to Morrison & Associates and spent the morning trying to focus on work. It was impossible. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time someone walked past my office, I tensed. I kept checking the clock. Noon, 12:30, 1 o'clock. At 1:15, my phone buzzed with a message from Margaret, *filed. All documents submitted to court. Service happening in 45 minutes. 45 minutes. I had 45 minutes before Marcus's world exploded. I tried to work on a brief I was supposed to have finished yesterday, but the words blurred on the screen. Around me, the office hummed with normal Friday energy, people planning happy hour, talking about weekend plans, complaining about cases. Jennifer walked past my office at 1:30, and she actually waved at me. Smiled. This woman who was about to be served with criminal charges waved at me like we were friends. I didn't wave back. I couldn't. Instead, I turned back to my computer and pretended to be absorbed in work. At exactly 2:07, my phone lit up with a notification from Margaret, *target 1 served. Marcus had the papers. 3 minutes later, *target 2 served. Jennifer had them too. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, waiting. Waiting for the explosion. It came faster than I expected. At 2:15, I heard raised voices in the hallway. I looked up to see Jennifer standing outside her office, papers in hand, face white as a sheet. One of the senior partners was talking to her, his expression grim. Then I saw building security approaching her. "Ms. Reeves, we need you to gather your personal items and leave the building immediately," the security guard said, his voice carrying down the hallway. Jennifer looked around wildly, and her eyes landed on me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. And in that moment, I saw her realize that I knew. That I'd always known. That she'd been caught. Her expression shifted from shock to rage. She started walking toward my office, and I stood up, my heart pounding. "You bitch," Jennifer hissed as she reached my doorway. "You fucking bitch. You set me up." "I didn't set you up," I said calmly, even though my hands were shaking. "You set yourself up. You and Marcus. I'm going to sue you for everything," she spat. "False accusations, defamation." "Good luck with that," I said. "Because everything in those papers you're holding is documented, proven, and legally ironclad. You conspired to defraud me, Jennifer. You fabricated evidence for a false adultery claim. You took money from my family. And now you're going to face the consequences." Security was at her side now. "Ms. Reeves, you need to leave." "This isn't over," Jennifer said, but her voice was shaking. She wasn't angry anymore, she was scared. "You don't know what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done," I said. "I've protected myself and my son from 2 people who tried to destroy us. That's what I've done." Security escorted her down the hallway. I watched her go, her expensive heels clicking on the tile floor, her carefully constructed life falling apart with each step. Within minutes, the entire office was buzzing. People emerged from their offices, whispering, speculating. Jennifer Reeves had been marched out by security. What had happened? Why was she fired? My boss, a senior partner named David Kim, appeared at my door. "Sarah, can I speak with you for a moment?" I nodded and followed him to his office. He closed the door and gestured for me to sit. "I just got a call from building security and HR," he said. "Jennifer Reeves has been terminated effective immediately. They mentioned something about legal action involving you. Can you tell me what's going on?" I'd prepared for this conversation. Jennifer and my husband have been conspiring to defraud me. She was fabricating evidence to support a false adultery claim in an impending divorce. I've filed criminal complaints against both of them, as well as divorce proceedings. The firm was not involved, and none of this was related to my work here. I'm sorry that it's affected the office. David's expression was serious. "Do you have proof of these allegations?" "Yes. Extensive documentation. My attorney has everything." He nodded slowly. "Okay. I'm going to need you to provide HR with a copy of the relevant documents, just for our records. But Sarah, if what you're saying is true, then I'm sorry you were targeted like this. Jennifer came highly recommended, and we had no idea she had an ulterior motive for working here.
I understand.
I'll get the documents to HR first thing Monday. Take the rest of the day off, David said. Go home, deal with this situation. If you need time off next week, let me know. I thanked him and left his office. As I walked back to my desk to gather my things, I could feel eyes on me. Everyone was watching, everyone was whispering. By Monday, the entire firm would know the story. But I didn't care. Let them know. Let everyone know what Marcus and Jennifer had tried to do. I grabbed my purse and headed for the elevator. My phone was blowing up with texts and calls from Marcus. I ignored all of them. But then a call came through from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it. Sarah Mitchell. A man's voice, professional. Yes. This is Detective Rodriguez with the Portland Police Department, Financial Crimes Division. I've received the criminal complaints filed by your attorney regarding embezzlement and fraud. I'd like to ask you some questions when you have time. Of course. When would you like to meet? Would Monday morning work? We'd like to move quickly on this, especially given the amount of money involved. We scheduled a meeting for Monday at 9, and I hung up feeling both vindicated and terrified. The police were involved now. This was real. This was actually happening. I drove home through the rainy Portland streets, my mind racing. When I pulled into the driveway, Ethan was waiting at the window. He opened the door before I even got to it. Is it done? He asked. It's done. We hugged, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But the breathing didn't last long. At 3:30, Marcus called again. This time, I answered. Sarah, what the fuck did you do? His voice was shaking with rage. I protected myself and our son, I said calmly. That's what I did. You filed for divorce? You filed criminal charges? Are you insane? No, Marcus. I'm not insane. I'm informed. I know about Jennifer. I know about the affair. I know about the money you've been stealing. I know about your plan to frame me for adultery. I know everything. Silence on the other end. Then, you don't know anything. Whatever Jennifer told you. Jennifer didn't tell me anything. Your son did. Another pause. What? Ethan found out about you and Jennifer in October. He's been investigating you for months. He found the emails, the financial records, all of it. And he came to me right before you tried to destroy me. That's impossible. Ethan doesn't. Doesn't what? Doesn't understand what you've been doing? He understands perfectly, Marcus. He understands that you were planning to take his mother for everything she had. He understands that you were going to frame her as an adulteress and take him away from her. He understands that you chose money and your cousin over your family. My cousin. Marcus's voice cracked. You know about that too. I know everything. I know Jennifer is your first cousin. I know you've been in a relationship with her for years. I know you married me for my family's money. I know about the shell companies, the transfers, the plan to file on Monday. I know all of it, Marcus. And now the court knows it too. And the police. I could hear him breathing hard on the other end. Sarah, listen to me. We can work this out. I made mistakes, okay? I fucked up. But we can fix this. We don't need to involve lawyers and courts and police. We can handle this ourselves. No, Marcus. We can't. Because you spent months planning to destroy me. You don't get to ask for mercy now that you've been caught. I have rights, he said, his voice turning hard. I have rights to that house, to our assets, to my son. You forfeited those rights when you committed fraud, I said. And as of right now, There's a restraining order preventing you from coming to this house or contacting Ethan. If you violate it, you'll be arrested. Do you understand? This is bullshit. You can't keep me from my son. I'm not keeping you from him. Your behavior is. If you want to see Ethan, you'll have to request supervised visitation through the court. And good luck with that, considering he's prepared to testify about everything you've done. You turned my son against me, Marcus said, and now he sounded like he might cry. You poisoned him. I didn't do anything, Marcus. You did this. All of it. You made the choices that led to this moment. And now you get to live with the consequences. I hung up. My hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through my body. Ethan appeared at my side. Was that Dad? Yeah. Is he coming here? He might try. But if he does, we call the police. We spent the next hour waiting, both of us tense and on edge. Every car that drove past made us jump. Every sound outside made my heart race. But Marcus didn't come. Instead, at 5 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. Oh my God, Sarah, I just heard. Are you okay? Is Ethan okay? We're fine. It's been a day, but we're fine. I can't believe this. Jennifer and Marcus? This whole time? And they were trying to frame you. It's a lot, I admitted. But it's over now. Or at least, the hiding part is over. Do you need me to come over? I can bring wine and food and moral support. That would be amazing, actually. Rachel showed up an hour later with Chinese takeout, 2 bottles of wine, and a fierce hug. We ate and talked while Ethan stayed in his room, giving us space. I knew something was off with Marcus, Rachel said, picking at her low mine. I couldn't put my finger on it, but he just seemed distant. Fake, almost. Like he was acting the role of your husband instead of actually being your husband. He was acting, I said. He's been acting for years, apparently. And Jennifer? I never would have guessed. She seemed so sweet, so supportive. She's a good actress too. They both are. But not good enough. My phone buzzed with a message from Margaret. * court granted all motions. Restraining order in effect. Assets frozen. Emergency custody hearing scheduled for Wednesday. You're winning, Sarah. *. I showed the message to Rachel, who raised her wine glass. To winning. To winning, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. But even as I said it, I knew this was just the beginning. Marcus and Jennifer would fight back. They'd hire lawyers, deny everything, try to twist the narrative. This was going to get uglier before it got better. But for tonight, sitting in my kitchen with my best friend and my son safe upstairs, I let myself feel victorious. I'd survived the hardest 2 weeks of my life. I'd played the role of oblivious wife while gathering the evidence I needed to protect myself. I'd trusted my 12-year-old son's plan, and it had worked. Marcus had underestimated me. He'd thought I was weak, trusting, easy to manipulate. He was wrong. And now he was going to spend the rest of this legal battle learning just how wrong he was. If you've made it this far in the story, drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Have you ever had to take down someone who underestimated you? Have you ever had to be stronger than you thought possible? Because this is where my story shifts from defense to offense. This is where I stopped surviving and started fighting. And trust me, the fight was just getting started. The weekend after the explosion was surreal. Marcus called 17 times on Saturday alone, each call going to voicemail, each message growing progressively more desperate. First, he was angry, threatening legal action of his own. Then he was conciliatory, begging me to drop the charges and work things out. Finally, he was just sad, talking about how much he loved me and Ethan, how he'd made mistakes but didn't deserve this. I didn't respond to any of them. Margaret had been clear. No contact, no engagement. Let him spiral. On Sunday morning, Ethan and I were having breakfast when my phone rang. An unknown number, but something told me to answer.
Hello.
Sarah Mitchell. This is Patricia Reeves, Jennifer's mother. I froze. Marcus's aunt. The woman whose husband had lost money in the deal with my father years ago. What do you want? I asked, putting the phone on speaker so Ethan could hear. I want you to know that you've destroyed my daughter's life. Patricia's voice was cold, bitter. She's facing criminal charges because of you. She lost her job because of you. All because you couldn't handle the fact that your husband didn't really love you. I felt Ethan tense beside me, but I kept my voice steady. Your daughter participated in a conspiracy to defraud me. She fabricated evidence. She engaged in an inappropriate relationship with her cousin, my husband. She did this to herself, Patricia. My daughter did what she had to do, Patricia spat. Your father destroyed our family 15 years ago. He stole everything from us, left my husband broken and bankrupt. Jennifer has every right to take from you what your family took from us. My father didn't steal anything, I said. He made a business investment that didn't work out. That's not theft, that's capitalism. And even if it were theft, that doesn't give Jennifer the right to destroy my life as revenge. You're naive, Patricia said. You have no idea what your family did to us. But now you'll understand what it feels like to lose everything. Because we're going to fight you, Sarah. We're going to fight you on every charge, every claim. We'll drag your name through the mud. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Good luck with that, I said. Because I have evidence. I have documentation. I have the truth on my side. What do you have? Bitterness and false accusations. We have lawyers, Patricia said. Good ones. Expensive ones. And we're going to make you regret ever coming after my daughter. She hung up. Ethan looked at me, his expression worried. Mom, can they really fight this? Can they win? No, I said, more confidently than I felt. They can fight, but they can't win. Margaret has everything documented. The evidence is ironclad. But Patricia's words haunted me. Expensive lawyers. A family with a grudge and apparently enough resources to mount a serious defense. This wasn't going to be easy. Monday morning, I met with Detective Rodriguez at the Portland Police Department. He was a tired-looking man in his 40s with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for coming in, he said, leading me to a small interview room. I've reviewed the complaints filed by your attorney, and I have to say, this is one of the more elaborate fraud schemes I've seen in a domestic case. Elaborate is one word for it, I said. He pulled out a file folder thick with documents. Let's start with the financial transfers. Your attorney documented over $70,000 moved from your joint trust account to various other accounts controlled by your husband. Can you walk me through when you became aware of these transfers? I explained everything, the wedding, signing the trust documents, Ethan's discovery of the affair, Margaret's investigation, the pattern of transfers that happened after I'd consolidated the accounts. And you had no knowledge of these transfers at the time they occurred?
None.
I trusted my husband with our finances. I thought the joint trust was for our family's benefit, not for him to steal from. Detective Rodriguez nodded, making notes. What about Jennifer Reeves? What was her role in all this? She was my husband's accomplice. She got hired at my law firm specifically to get close to me, to document conversations that she could later twist into evidence of an affair I wasn't having. She was planning to testify in divorce proceedings that I'd confessed to adultery with a colleague. It was all fabricated. Do you have evidence of this fabrication? We have emails between Jennifer and Marcus discussing the plan. We have financial records showing money transferred to Jennifer. We have recordings of their conversations about the scheme. The detective raised his eyebrows. Recordings? How did you obtain those? I explained about Ethan installing recording software on Marcus's phone, about Oregon's one-party consent laws. That's innovative, Detective Rodriguez said carefully. Your son is 12.
Yes.
That's quite a sophisticated investigation for a 12-year-old. He had help from our investigator. But yes, my son is remarkable. We spent the next 2 hours going through every detail. Detective Rodriguez asked about specific transactions, specific conversations, specific dates. He wanted to establish a timeline, prove intent and conspiracy. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to be honest with you, he said finally. This case is solid. The evidence is compelling. I'll be recommending that the District Attorney's Office pursue charges against both Marcus Chen and Jennifer Reeves for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. However, you need to understand that criminal cases move slowly. It could be months before this goes to trial, and in the meantime, your divorce proceedings will be happening separately.
I understand.
You should also know that Marcus and Jennifer will likely hire defense attorneys who will try to discredit you, discredit your evidence, and paint this as a vindictive ex-wife making false accusations. Are you prepared for that? I thought about everything I'd been through already. The lies, the betrayal, the 2 weeks of surveillance. I'm prepared, I said. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for Wednesday morning. Margaret prepared me extensively, warning me that Marcus's lawyer would try to paint me as an unfit mother, as someone who'd involved her child in an adult conflict. They're going to attack you for letting Ethan investigate Marcus, Margaret said Tuesday evening, during a prep session at her office. They're going to claim you manipulated him, used him as a spy, put him in emotional danger. But I didn't know what Ethan was doing, I protested. He did it on his own. I know that. And Ethan will testify to that. But you need to be ready for them to twist it. Wednesday morning arrived too quickly. I dressed in a conservative navy suit, pulled my hair back in a professional bun, and tried to calm my nerves. Ethan was coming with me. At 12, he was old enough to speak to the judge about his custody preferences. The courthouse was cold and institutional, all marble floors and fluorescent lights. We met Margaret in the hallway outside the courtroom, and she gave me a reassuring smile.
Ready.
Ready as I'll ever be. We entered the courtroom, and I saw Marcus for the first time since the Friday explosion. He was sitting at a table with his lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s named Diana Foster. Marcus looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled suit, dark circles under his eyes.
Good.
Jennifer wasn't there. This was just about custody, not about the criminal charges. But I could feel her presence anyway, the ghost of her conspiracy hanging over everything. Judge Morrison was exactly as Margaret had described, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with grey hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She called the hearing to order and got straight to business. I've reviewed the emergency custody petition, she said, looking between our 2 tables. Mrs. Mitchell is seeking sole legal and physical custody of the minor child, Ethan Chen, age 12. Mr. Chen is opposing this request and seeking joint custody. Let's start with Mrs. Mitchell's attorney. Margaret stood. Your Honor, we're seeking sole custody due to Mr. Chen's recent behavior, which demonstrates a pattern of deception, financial misconduct, and prioritization of his own interests over the well-being of his son. Mr. Chen has been engaged in an extramarital affair for over 8 months, during which time he involved the minor child's mother in an elaborate scheme to defraud her of marital assets. Furthermore, Mr. Chen has been planning to relocate to California with his paramour after the divorce, with no consideration for how this would affect Ethan's life, schooling, or relationship with his mother. Marcus's lawyer, Diana Foster, stood immediately. Your Honor, these are serious allegations, but they're just that, allegations. Mr. Chen denies the claims of fraud and maintains that his relationship with Ms. Reeves was not a conspiracy but rather a personal matter that, while regrettable, does not impact his ability to parent his son. Your Honor, we have substantial evidence, Margaret countered, pulling out a thick folder. Financial records, email correspondence, recorded conversations. This isn't speculation, it's documented fact. Judge Morrison held up a hand. I'll review the evidence in due course. First, I'd like to hear from the child. Ethan, would you approach the bench? My heart clenched as Ethan stood up. He looked so small walking up to the judge, but his shoulders were straight, his head held high. Ethan, I understand you're 12 years old, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you understand why we're here today?
Yes.
You're deciding who I should live with after my parents' divorce.
That's right.
And at your age, your preference carries significant weight with the court. Can you tell me where you'd like to live? Ethan didn't hesitate.
With my mom.
I saw Marcus flinch. Can you tell me why? Judge Morrison asked gently. Because my dad has been lying to us for a long time. He's been having an affair with Jennifer, and they were planning to take my mom's money and leave. I found out about it in October, and I've been trying to protect my mom ever since. My dad didn't think about how any of this would affect me. He only thought about himself and what he wanted. My mom is the one who's always been there for me, who's always put me first. That's who I want to live with.
I see.
And Ethan, your father's attorney has suggested that your mother might have influenced your decision or used you to investigate your father. Is that true?
No,
Ethan said firmly. My mom didn't know I was investigating. I did it because I was scared and I didn't know what else to do. I found a private investigator who could help, and I gave her the evidence I'd found. My mom only found out about all of this 2 weeks ago, right before the wedding. She didn't make me do anything. Judge Morrison made some notes. Thank you, Ethan. You can sit down. As Ethan walked back to our table, I saw tears in his eyes. I reached for his hand and squeezed it. Marcus's lawyer called Marcus to testify. He took the stand looking defeated but determined. Mr. Chen, can you tell the court about your relationship with your son? Ethan is my whole world, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. I love him more than anything. Yes, I made mistakes in my marriage. I'm not proud of that. But those mistakes don't make me a bad father. I've always been there for Ethan, always supported him, always made sure he had everything he needed. And the allegations of fraud. They're exaggerated. My wife and I had a joint trust. I moved some money around for investment purposes. It wasn't theft, it was financial planning. The criminal charges are my wife's way of punishing me for the affair. It's vindictive. Margaret stood for cross-examination. Mr. Chen, you testified that you moved money for investment purposes. Can you explain why you transferred $25,000 to a shell company called Apex Consulting that you registered 3 months before your vow renewal ceremony? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. That was for a business opportunity. What business opportunity? A tech startup investment. And why was it registered under a shell company instead of your personal name? For tax purposes. For tax purposes, Margaret repeated. And the $30,000 you transferred to an investment account in Jennifer Reeves's name, was that also for tax purposes? That was a loan. A loan. Do you have a loan agreement documenting this? It was informal. An informal $30,000 loan to your girlfriend.
I see.
Margaret pulled out more documents. Mr. Chen, in an email dated February 14th of this year, Valentine's Day, you wrote to Jennifer, and I quote, "Once the trust is signed, we'll have access to everything. Sarah's inheritance, the retirement accounts, all of it. We just need to be patient a little longer." Can you explain what you meant by that? Marcus's face went red. That's taken out of context. What's the context? I was talking about our future. About what Jennifer and I would have together after the divorce. After divorce in which you plan to claim your wife committed adultery, correct? My wife and I had grown apart. I believed she might be having an affair. Based on what evidence? Jennifer told me that Sarah had been acting suspicious at work, spending time with a male colleague. You mean Todd Stevens, the 60-year-old married senior partner with grandchildren? The courtroom was silent. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. Judge Morrison had seen enough. I'm going to grant temporary sole custody to Mrs. Mitchell pending further hearings. Mr. Chen, you will have supervised visitation on weekends, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. We'll reconvene in 30 days to reassess. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and I felt like I could finally breathe. Marcus stood up, looking stricken. He tried to approach Ethan, but the bailiff stepped between them, reminding him of the restraining order. Ethan, Marcus called out. Son, please. I love you. This isn't what I wanted. Then you shouldn't have done it, Dad, Ethan said quietly. Then he turned and walked out of the courtroom with me. In the hallway, Margaret hugged us both. You did great in there. Both of you. What happens now? I asked. Now we prepare for the main divorce hearing, which will be scheduled in the next few weeks, and the criminal trial for Marcus and Jennifer, which will probably happen in a few months. But you won the first battle, Sarah. You protected your son. I looked at Ethan, who was trying very hard not to cry. Come on, I said. Let's go home. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, I sat in the living room with a glass of wine and let myself process everything that had happened. In the span of 5 days, my entire life had transformed. I'd gone from pretending to be a happy wife to being a single mother with sole custody, fighting a legal battle on multiple fronts. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Asterisk, how did it go? Asterisk. Asterisk, we won custody. Marcus gets supervised visitation only. Asterisk. Asterisk, yes. I'm so proud of you. Asterisk. Asterisk, thanks. It's been a hell of a week. Asterisk. Asterisk, understatement of the century. Want me to come over? Asterisk. Asterisk, no, I'm okay. Just need to decompress. Asterisk. Asterisk, call me if you need anything. Love you. Asterisk. Asterisk, love you too. Asterisk. I sat there in the quiet house, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The discovery at Marcus's office. Ethan's revelation. The surveillance, the wedding, the perfect performance I'd given while gathering evidence. And I thought about what came next. The divorce hearing. The criminal trial. The inevitable attempts by Marcus and Jennifer to fight back, to discredit me, to salvage something from the wreckage of their conspiracy. They'd underestimated me once. They thought I was weak, trusting, easily manipulated. They were learning, slowly and painfully, that they were wrong. And before this was over, they would learn exactly how wrong they were. I raised my wine glass to the empty room. To winning, I whispered. And I meant it. The weeks following the custody hearing were a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. I had Ethan, which was everything. But Marcus and Jennifer weren't going down without a fight. Marcus hired a more expensive lawyer, some hotshot from Seattle named Richard Blackwell, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Translation: he specialized in destroying the opposition through any means necessary. Blackwell immediately filed motions challenging the restraining order, the custody decision, and the asset freeze. He painted me as a vindictive ex-wife who'd manipulated her son and fabricated evidence out of spite. Jennifer, meanwhile, hired her own attorney, a woman named Sandra Chen, no relation to Marcus, ironically, who was known for defending white-collar criminals. Sandra's strategy was simple. Claim that Jennifer was just a woman in love who'd been caught up in Marcus's schemes without full knowledge of what was happening. Paint her as a victim, not a conspirator. It might have worked, except for one thing. Margaret was better than all of them. The divorce hearing was scheduled for mid-June, about 6 weeks after the initial explosion. During those 6 weeks, Margaret continued her investigation and uncovered things that even I hadn't known about. Sarah, you need to see this, Margaret said during one of our weekly meetings. She slid a document across her desk. I've been digging into Marcus's employment history, specifically his work at Tech Vista Solutions. I picked up the document. It was an internal company memo dated from 3 years ago, addressed to Marcus's supervisor. Asterisk subject: Inquiry into expense report discrepancies. Asterisk. We've identified several irregularities in Marcus Chen's expense reports over the past 18 months. Specifically, charges for hotels, restaurants, and travel that don't correspond to any business-related activities. He was expensing his affairs, Margaret said. Hotels where he met Jennifer, dinners he bought for her, all charged to his company credit card as business expenses. TechVista noticed but never pursued it. They gave him a warning and made him repay about $15,000, but they didn't fire him.
Why not?
Because Marcus was a valuable employee and they didn't want to lose him. But more importantly for our case, this establishes a pattern of financial dishonesty that goes back years. It's not just about you and the divorce. It's about who Marcus fundamentally is as a person. I felt sick. 3 years ago. That meant Marcus had been cheating with Jennifer, using company money to fund it, while I was at home raising our son. While I was planning birthday parties and making dinner and believing we were a family. There's more, Margaret said. She pulled out another document. Jennifer's personnel file from Morrison and Associates. When she applied for the job, she listed her previous employment as a paralegal at a firm in Seattle. I contacted that firm. Jennifer was fired after 6 months for falsifying billable hours. So she's a fraud even beyond all this. Exactly. She has a pattern of dishonesty in professional settings. This isn't a woman who made one bad choice out of love. This is a woman who makes calculated decisions to benefit herself, regardless of ethics or legality. The evidence kept mounting. Financial records. Employment histories. Email chains that showed Marcus and Jennifer planning their scheme in meticulous detail. By the time the divorce hearing arrived, Margaret had built a case so comprehensive that even Richard Blackwell's expensive reputation couldn't save Marcus. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in a charcoal grey suit and pulled my hair back. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 2 months ago, I'd been preparing for a vow renewal, believing I was about to celebrate my marriage. Now I was preparing to end it, and to make sure Marcus paid for everything he tried to do. Ethan wanted to come, but I convinced him to stay home. He'd already testified at the custody hearing, and I didn't want him to sit through hours of legal proceedings dissecting his father's crimes. "Are you going to be okay, Mom?" he asked as I was leaving. "I'm going to be better than okay," I told him. "I'm going to win." At the courthouse, Margaret met me with a rolling case full of evidence binders. "Ready. Let's do this." The courtroom was larger than the one for the custody hearing. Judge Andrea Morrison presided again. I'd learned she'd specifically requested to oversee the full divorce case after seeing the custody evidence. She was known for having zero tolerance for fraud and deception in family law cases. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with Richard Blackwell, looking better than he had at the custody hearing. Clean-shaven, expensive suit, the appearance of a man wronged rather than a man guilty. But his eyes gave him away. When he glanced at me, I saw fear. Jennifer wasn't in the courtroom for the divorce proceedings, but I knew she'd be called as a witness. Her criminal trial was scheduled separately for later in the summer. Judge Morrison called the hearing to order. "This is the dissolution of marriage proceeding for Mitchell versus Chen. I've reviewed the initial filings, and this is quite a complex case. Let's begin with Mrs. Mitchell's petition." Margaret stood, and for the next hour, she systematically laid out the entire conspiracy. The emails between Marcus and Jennifer planning the fraud. The financial transfers, which had now been traced to total over $90,000. The false affidavit Jennifer had prepared claiming I'd confessed to an affair. The plan to file for divorce after consolidating assets, claiming my adultery to gain leverage in the settlement. She presented Marcus's expense report fraud from TechVista. Jennifer's termination from her previous employer. Phone records showing thousands of calls and texts between Marcus and Jennifer over the course of years, including times when Marcus had told me he was working late or on business trips. "Your Honor," Margaret said, "this wasn't a marriage that simply fell apart. This was a calculated, long-term conspiracy to defraud Mrs. Mitchell of assets that were rightfully hers, including a substantial inheritance from her deceased father. Mr. Chen married Mrs. Mitchell, at least in part, for financial gain. He maintained a relationship with his first cousin throughout the marriage. And when he decided he wanted out, rather than simply filing for divorce honestly, he concocted an elaborate scheme to maximize his financial gain while destroying Mrs. Mitchell's reputation and potentially gaining custody of their son. Richard Blackwell stood for his response. He was a tall man with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that probably intimidated opposing counsel in most cases. But he wasn't facing most cases. "Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell's attorney has painted a dramatic picture, but the reality is much simpler. Yes, my client had an affair. He's not proud of that. Yes, he moved some money around in anticipation of divorce proceedings. But that's not fraud, that's asset protection, which is common in contested divorces. Mrs. Mitchell is hurt and angry about the affair, which is understandable, but she's weaponized that hurt into false criminal charges and exaggerated claims of conspiracy." "Mr. Blackwell," Judge Morrison interrupted, "are you suggesting that the documented emails discussing a plan to frame Mrs. Mitchell for adultery are exaggerated?" "I'm suggesting they are taken out of context, Your Honor. My client and Ms. Reeves discussed many things in the course of their relationship. Some of those discussions were speculative, hypothetical plans to commit perjury." Margaret interjected. "Counsel," Judge Morrison warned, "let's keep this orderly. Mr. Blackwell, I'll hear your evidence." Blackwell called Marcus to the stand. Under oath, Marcus told his version of events. He admitted to the affair but claimed it was emotional, not financial. He claimed the money transfers were legitimate investments and loans, not theft. He claimed that Jennifer's affidavit about my supposed affair was based on genuine concerns she'd shared with him about my behavior at work. Then Margaret cross-examined him, and everything fell apart. "Mr. Chen, you testified that you moved money for legitimate investments. Can you name a single investment you made with the funds transferred from your joint trust?" Marcus hesitated. "There were several. Tech stocks, mostly." "Can you provide account statements showing these investments?" I don't have them with me." "You don't have them, or they don't exist." "I don't have them." Margaret pulled out a document. "Your Honor, this is a comprehensive review of Mr. Chen's financial accounts conducted by our forensic accountant. There are no tech stock investments. There are no investments at all. The money transferred from the joint trust went to shell companies and personal accounts, and from there it was either spent or transferred to Ms. Reeves. Mr. Chen, you're testifying under oath. Do you want to revise your testimony?" Marcus looked at his lawyer helplessly. "I may have misspoken." "You may have lied under oath," Margaret said bluntly. "Let's move on. You testified that Ms. Reeves's concerns about Mrs. Mitchell having an affair were genuine. What specific evidence did Ms. Reeves provide to support these concerns?" "She said Sarah was spending a lot of time with Todd Stevens." Todd Stevens, who is 62 years old, married for 35 years, and has never had a single complaint of inappropriate workplace behavior in his 20-year career at Morrison & Associates. "I don't know his full background." "Did you ever ask for evidence? Did you ever see Mrs. Mitchell and Mr. Stevens together in any context that suggested an affair?" "No, but Jennifer was concerned." "Jennifer was fabricating evidence for your divorce case. That's what she was doing. And you knew it." Marcus's face was red. "I didn't know she was fabricating." "Mr. Chen, in an email dated March 3rd, you wrote to Ms. Reeves, quote, 'Make sure the Todd angle is believable. We need it to look organic, not manufactured.' That doesn't sound like you believed her concerns were genuine. That sounds like you were actively participating in creating a false narrative." Silence. Marcus had no answer. "Let me ask you something else," Margaret continued. "You and Ms. Reeves are first cousins, correct?" "Yes." "And you've been in a romantic relationship with her for approximately 7 years." "That's not. The relationship wasn't consistent." 7 years, Mr. Chen. Including the entire duration of your marriage to Mrs. Mitchell. You married Mrs. Mitchell while maintaining a relationship with Ms. Reeves. Is that correct? It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's bigamy in spirit if not in law. You committed to one woman while maintaining a relationship with another, who happens to be your cousin. And when Mrs. Mitchell's father died and left her a substantial inheritance, you saw an opportunity to cash out.
Yes or no? That's not fair.
Answer the question. Did you see Mrs. Mitchell's inheritance as an opportunity to enrich yourself and Ms. Reeves? Marcus looked at his lawyer, who couldn't help him. We discussed the money, yes. You discussed stealing it.
I didn't steal.
You transferred $90,000 out of accounts that Mrs. Mitchell funded with her inheritance. Without her knowledge. While planning to divorce her and claim she was the unfaithful one. That's theft, Mr. Chen. That's fraud. That's conspiracy.
And you know it.
Margaret returned to her table, and I saw Marcus slump in his chair. He looked defeated, exposed, humiliated.
Good.
The hearing continued for another 3 hours. Margaret called witnesses, colleagues from my firm who testified that Todd Stevens and I had never had anything but a professional relationship, that Jennifer had been asking pointed questions about my work relationships, that she'd seemed overly interested in my personal life. She called the forensic accountant, who walked through every single fraudulent transaction in painful detail. She even called someone I hadn't expected, Marcus's former supervisor from Tech Vista, who testified about the expense report fraud from 3 years ago. Richard Blackwell tried to object, tried to redirect, tried to paint his client as a flawed but fundamentally decent man who'd made mistakes. But there was no recovering from the evidence. Finally, Judge Morrison had heard enough. I'm going to take a brief recess to review my notes, and then I'll issue my ruling. We waited in the hallway. Margaret was confident. We've got this. There's no way she rules in his favor. I wanted to believe her, but I'd learned not to count on anything until it was official. After 20 minutes, we were called back in. Judge Morrison looked severe behind her bench. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, she began, and I have to say, this is one of the most egregious cases of marital fraud I've encountered in my 23 years on the bench. Mr. Chen, you didn't just have an affair. You conducted a multi-year conspiracy to defraud your wife of assets, involving elaborate planning, false evidence creation, and coordination with your paramour to destroy your wife's reputation and take custody of your child for financial gain. Marcus started to stand, but his lawyer pulled him back down. I'm granting Mrs. Mitchell's petition for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. The marriage is dissolved. As for asset division, Mrs. Mitchell will retain sole ownership of the marital home, full custody of the minor child with Mr. Chen limited to supervised visitation, and all assets in the joint trust, which will be transferred entirely to her name. Mr. Chen will repay all funds transferred fraudulently, $93,000, plus interest and penalties, totaling approximately $115,000. He will also be responsible for Mrs. Mitchell's legal fees. I heard Marcus make a sound like he'd been punched. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I'm recommending that the District Attorney's Office pursue criminal charges with full vigor. The evidence of fraud and conspiracy is overwhelming. And Mr. Chen, let me be clear, I will be monitoring your compliance with this order. If you fail to repay the funds, if you violate the custody or visitation terms, if you attempt to contact Mrs. Mitchell in violation of the restraining order, you will face contempt charges and possible jail time. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus said weakly.
Good.
This case has taken up enough of this court's time. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Margaret turned to me, grinning. We won. We won everything. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of vindication, of knowing that I'd fought back and won. Across the courtroom, I saw Marcus sitting motionless, staring at nothing. Richard Blackwell was packing up his briefcase, probably already calculating how much he'd bill for this loss. Marcus looked broken. I felt a moment of something that might have been pity. This was the man I'd loved, the father of my child. But then I remembered what he'd tried to do to me, and the pity evaporated. He'd made his choices. Now he had to live with them. As Margaret and I left the courtroom, I pulled out my phone and called Ethan. Mom. We won, baby. We won everything. I heard him exhale in relief. When are you coming home? Right now. I'm coming home right now. That evening, Rachel came over with champagne and we celebrated. Margaret too, whom I'd invited because she'd become more than just my lawyer. She'd become a friend, an advocate, someone who'd fought for me when I couldn't fully fight for myself. To justice, Rachel toasted. To accountability, Margaret added. To never underestimating a woman with something to fight for, I said. We drank, and for the first time in months, I felt light. The weight I'd been carrying, the fear, the anger, the constant vigilance, was finally lifting. But Margaret's expression grew more serious. Sarah, you should know that Jennifer's trial is coming up in 2 months. You'll probably have to testify. I'm ready, I said. After today, I'm ready for anything. Good. Because her lawyer is going to try a different angle. She's not defending Jennifer's actions. She can't. The evidence is too strong. Instead, she's going to argue diminished culpability. That Jennifer was manipulated by Marcus, that she was blinded by love, that she didn't fully understand the legal consequences of what they were planning. But that's not true. Jennifer was a paralegal. She knew exactly what she was doing. I know. And we'll prove that. But you need to be prepared for her to play the victim card. She'll probably cry on the stand, talk about how she loved Marcus, how she made mistakes but didn't mean to hurt anyone. The jury might be sympathetic. She tried to destroy my life, I said flatly. She fabricated evidence, she stole money, she conspired to take my son from me. I don't care how many tears she cries, she deserves whatever consequences come her way. Margaret nodded. Good. Hold on to that feeling. You're going to need it. And I did hold on to it. Because while the divorce was over, while I'd won custody and assets and vindication, the fight wasn't finished. Jennifer still had to answer for what she'd done. And I was going to make sure she did. If you're still with me in this story, I want to thank you for listening. For staying through all the twists and turns, all the revelations and courtroom battles. Because this is where things get even more interesting. This is where I learned that revenge isn't just about winning in court, it's about making sure justice is truly served, no matter how long it takes. Make sure to check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories of survival, of fighting back, of refusing to be a victim. Because my story? It wasn't over yet. Jennifer's criminal trial began on a sweltering August morning. Portland was in the middle of a heat wave, and the courthouse air conditioning struggled to keep up with the packed courtroom. The case had attracted media attention. A paralegal and her first cousin conspiring to defraud his wife made for salacious headlines, and the gallery was filled with reporters, curious onlookers, and a few people from Morrison and Associates who wanted to see how it all ended. I sat in the front row with Margaret on one side and Ethan on the other. Yes, I brought Ethan. He was 13 now. His birthday had passed in July, a quiet celebration with just Rachel, my mother, and me, and he'd asked to be there. He wanted to see it through, and I understood that need. Marcus was there too, though not as a defendant in this particular trial. His criminal trial was scheduled for September, but he'd been called as a witness, and I could see him sitting in the hallway through the courtroom doors, looking gaunt and exhausted. The divorce judgment had financially devastated him. He'd had to sell his car to start repaying the money he owed me, and TechVista had fired him once news of the criminal charges became public. He was living in a studio apartment and working some tech support job that paid a fraction of his former salary. Part of me, a very small part, felt bad for him. But mostly, I felt nothing. He'd burned that bridge himself. Jennifer entered the courtroom flanked by her lawyer, Sandra Chen, and her mother, Patricia Reeves. Jennifer looked different than I remembered. Thinner, paler, her usual polished appearance replaced by something more subdued. She wore a simple blue dress and minimal makeup, clearly trying to look sympathetic and non-threatening. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I saw something in her expression I couldn't quite read.
Anger, fear, regret.
Maybe all three. The trial began with opening statements. The prosecutor, an assistant district attorney named Michael Torres, no relation to Margaret, laid out the case methodically. Jennifer Reeves had conspired with Marcus Chen to defraud Sarah Mitchell of marital assets. She had fabricated evidence. She had prepared false testimony. She had received stolen funds. All of this was documented, proven, undeniable. Sandra Chen, Jennifer's lawyer, gave her opening statement with the demeanor of someone playing a weak hand brilliantly. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you're going to hear a lot of evidence today. Evidence of poor choices, of moral failures, of a woman who fell in love with the wrong man and made terrible decisions because of that love. But what you won't hear is evidence of criminal intent. Jennifer Reeves isn't a criminal mastermind. She's a woman who was manipulated by Marcus Chen, who believed his lies about his marriage, who participated in actions she didn't fully understand the legal consequences of. She made mistakes. She knows that. But mistakes aren't crimes. Intent is what matters. And Jennifer never intended to commit fraud. It was a good strategy. Paint Jennifer as naive, love-struck, manipulated. Make Marcus the villain and Jennifer his unwitting accomplice. But Margaret had warned me this was coming, and we were ready. The prosecution called its first witness, the forensic accountant who traced all the money transfers. He methodically walked the jury through $93,000 moving from my accounts to shell companies, to investment accounts in Jennifer's name, to cash withdrawals. He showed how Jennifer had access to these accounts, how she'd made withdrawals, how she'd spent the money on rent, clothes, travel. This wasn't money being held in trust, he explained. This was money being actively spent by Ms. Reeves, with full knowledge of where it came from. Sandra Chen cross-examined, trying to suggest that Jennifer believed the money was legitimately Marcus's to give her. But the accountant was unshakable. Ms. Reeves is a paralegal. She has professional training in legal matters. She would have known that transferring marital assets without the spouse's knowledge is fraudulent. Next, the prosecution presented the emails. The ones I'd read that terrible day in March, sitting at Marcus's laptop while he showered. The jury listened as the prosecutor read them aloud. Asterisk Marcus. Make sure the Todd angle is believable. We need it to look organic, not manufactured. Asterisk. Asterisk Jennifer. I'm working on it. I've been planting seeds with other people at the firm, asking questions about Sarah and Todd. By the time we need my testimony, there will be multiple witnesses who remember me expressing concerns. Asterisk. The jury's expressions shifted. This wasn't a woman who'd been manipulated. This was a woman actively scheming. More emails followed, each one more damning than the last. Jennifer discussing how to fabricate evidence. Jennifer suggesting ways to hide the money transfers. Jennifer celebrating after I'd signed the trust documents. Asterisk Jennifer. She signed everything. We're so close now. Just a few more weeks and we're free. Asterisk. Sandra Chen objected repeatedly, trying to claim the emails were taken out of context, but Judge Harrison, a different judge than Morrison, an older man known for running efficient trials, overruled most of her objections. Then came my turn to testify. I walked to the stand, was sworn in, and sat down. The courtroom felt massive, all those eyes on me. But I'd prepared for this. I'd been through the divorce trial, through the custody hearing. I could do this. The prosecutor asked me to tell my story. I did, starting from the beginning. Meeting Marcus, our courthouse wedding, building a life together. Ethan's birth. My father's death and the inheritance. Marcus suggesting the vow renewal. The planning, the excitement, the belief that we were fixing our marriage. And then the discovery. The anonymous phone call. Going to Marcus's office. Finding him with Jennifer. Ethan's revelation that he'd known for months. Several jurors were leaning forward, completely absorbed. Mrs. Mitchell, did you have any knowledge of the money transfers from your trust account? The prosecutor asked.
None.
I trusted my husband with our finances. I never imagined he would steal from me. And did you ever have an affair with Todd Stevens or any other colleague at your firm?
Never.
I was faithful to my husband throughout our marriage, even when he wasn't faithful to me. Did Jennifer Reeves ever express concerns to you about your relationship with Todd Stevens?
Not directly to me, no.
She mentioned him once or twice in passing, made a casual comment about him talking to me at work. But there was nothing concerning about our relationship because there was no relationship. Todd is a senior partner who I worked with professionally.
That's all.
The prosecutor showed me a document, Jennifer's affidavit, the one she'd prepared for Marcus's divorce filing. I read it, and even though I'd seen it before, it still made me angry. I, Jennifer Reeves, hereby attest that Sarah Mitchell confessed to me on multiple occasions that she was having an extramarital affair with Todd Stevens, a colleague at Morrison & Associates. She expressed guilt about the affair but said she felt emotionally disconnected from her husband and found comfort in Mr. Stevens's attention.
All lies. Every word.
Mrs. Mitchell, is anything in this affidavit true?
No.
I never said any of those things to Jennifer. I never confessed to an affair because I never had an affair. This entire document is fabricated. The prosecutor nodded. No further questions. Sandra Chen stood for cross-examination. She was a small woman with sharp features and sharper intelligence. Mrs. Mitchell, you testified that you trusted your husband with your finances. Isn't it possible that you simply didn't pay attention to the accounts, and that's why you missed the transfers? I trusted him, but I also received account statements. The transfers didn't show up on my statements because they occurred after I'd signed the new trust documents, and Marcus had arranged for the statements to go only to his email. So you admit you weren't closely monitoring your own accounts? I trusted my husband not to steal from me. That's not the same as not monitoring accounts. You've painted my client as a schemer, a woman who deliberately set out to destroy you. But isn't it possible that Jennifer genuinely believed Marcus's marriage was over, that she was simply supporting someone she loved?
No.
Jennifer knew exactly what she was doing. She got a job at my firm specifically to get close to me. She documented our conversations. She prepared false testimony. That's not supporting someone, that's conspiring with them. You seem very angry, Mrs. Mitchell. Of course I'm angry. Your client tried to destroy my life. And that anger might color your interpretation of events, might make you see malice where there was simply poor judgment. I looked directly at Sandra Chen, then at Jennifer. I see malice because malice is what existed. Jennifer Reeves is sitting in this courtroom because she committed crimes. Not because I'm angry, but because she's guilty. Sandra Chen tried a few more questions, attempting to rattle me, but I held firm. I'd been through too much to crack now. After I stepped down, the prosecution rested its case. Sandra Chen called Jennifer to the stand. Jennifer looked nervous as she was sworn in. Her hands trembled as she sat down. And then she began her testimony, and I watched her transform into exactly what Margaret had predicted, the sympathetic victim. I loved Marcus, Jennifer said, tears in her eyes. I've loved him since we were teenagers. When we reconnected a few years ago, he told me his marriage was essentially over, that he and Sarah were only staying together for Ethan. I believed him. Did you know that Mr. Chen was planning to frame Mrs. Mitchell for adultery? Sandra Chen asked. Not initially. Marcus told me he was gathering evidence for a divorce, and I helped him because I thought he was trying to protect himself. What about the money transfers? Marcus told me those were legitimate. He said he was moving money into accounts for tax purposes, for investment purposes. I didn't know he was stealing from Sarah. I swear I didn't. She was good. Her voice cracked at all the right moments. She looked at the jury with pleading eyes. She played the part of the foolish woman in love who'd been used by a manipulative man. But then the prosecutor cross-examined her, and things fell apart. Ms. Reeves, you testified that you didn't know Mr. Chen was stealing from Mrs. Mitchell. But you're a paralegal with professional training in legal matters, correct?
Yes.
So you understand what constitutes marital property? Generally, yes. And you understand that transferring marital property without both spouses' knowledge is illegal?
Yes.
Yet you accepted over $30,000 transferred from accounts that belonged to both Mr. Chen and Mrs. Mitchell. You spent that money. You used it for rent, for clothes, for travel. You didn't question where it came from. Marcus said it was his money. But it wasn't his money. It was marital property. And as a paralegal, you knew that. Jennifer's composure was cracking. I trusted him. Let's talk about the emails. The ones where you discuss making the Todd angle believable and planting seeds with colleagues at Mrs. Mitchell's firm. Those don't sound like the words of someone who was manipulated. Those sound like the words of someone actively participating in a conspiracy. I was just trying to help Marcus. Help him frame his wife for adultery? Help him steal her inheritance? That's the kind of help you were providing. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Ms. Reeves? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and Mr. Chen worked together to systematically destroy an innocent woman's life for financial gain. You fabricated evidence. You prepared false testimony. You spent stolen money. And now you want this jury to believe you were just a naive woman in love. Jennifer was crying now, but the prosecutor wasn't done. One more question, Ms. Reeves. You testified that you've loved Marcus Chen since you were teenagers. He's your first cousin, correct?
Yes.
And you pursued a romantic relationship with him despite that familial connection, despite the fact that he was married, despite the fact that he had a child.
Yes.
Because you wanted him. And you were willing to do whatever it took to have him, including destroying his wife. Isn't that the truth?
No.
Isn't it true that your mother, Patricia Reeves, blames Mrs. Mitchell's father for your own father's financial problems? Sandra Chen objected. Relevance, Your Honor. I'll allow it, Judge Harrison said. Answer the question, Ms. Reeves. Jennifer looked at her mother in the gallery. My mother had issues with Sarah's father, yes. And you saw an opportunity for revenge, didn't you? Revenge against the daughter of the man your family blamed for your father's downfall. No, that's not. You targeted Mrs. Mitchell specifically because of who her father was. You got a job at her firm. You befriended her. You gathered information. And you worked with Marcus Chen to take everything from her. That's not love, Ms. Reeves. That's calculated revenge. Jennifer was sobbing now, unable to form coherent answers. The jury watched, and I could see their expressions shifting from sympathy to something colder. The defense rested. Closing arguments were brief. The prosecutor reminded the jury of the overwhelming evidence. Sandra Chen made one last plea for mercy, for understanding, for recognizing that Jennifer had made mistakes but wasn't a hardened criminal. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, Jennifer stood to hear the verdict. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of preparing false evidence, we find the defendant guilty. 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 Jennifer collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Her mother let out a cry from the gallery. Sandra Chen put a comforting hand on Jennifer's shoulder, but there was nothing she could do now. Judge Harrison scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later and remanded Jennifer to custody pending sentencing. As bailiffs led her away in handcuffs, she looked at me one more time. And this time, I saw exactly what was in her expression: hatred. Pure, undiluted hatred. She tried to destroy me, and instead I destroyed her. And she would hate me for that for the rest of her life. I found that I didn't care. Outside the courthouse, Margaret and I stood on the steps while reporters shouted questions at us. I ignored them, turning instead to look at Ethan. "It's over," I said. "Really over." Almost, Ethan corrected. Dad's trial is still coming. Do you want to be there for that? Ethan thought about it. No. I think I've seen enough. Dad made his choices. Let him face the consequences without me watching. I hugged him, this brave, brilliant boy who'd saved me when I didn't even know I needed saving. 3 weeks later, Jennifer was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. Marcus's trial resulted in a similar sentence, for years, parole possible after 2. They would both lose their professional licenses. They would both have felony convictions on their records. They would both spend years rebuilding their lives after prison, trying to find work, trying to find redemption. And I would move on. I was already moving on. I'd sold the house, too many memories, and bought a smaller place closer to Ethan's school. I'd gotten a promotion at work, a reward for handling everything with professionalism despite the personal chaos. Ethan was thriving, making new friends, joining the debate team. And me. I was learning how to be me again. Not Marcus's wife. Not the victim of a conspiracy. Just Sarah. A woman who'd been tested and had survived. A woman who'd fought back and won. 6 months after Jennifer's sentencing, I got a letter. It was forwarded from my old address, and the return address was the Women's Correctional Facility where Jennifer was serving her sentence. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity got the better of me. Sarah, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I'm the last person who has any right to ask anything of you. But I need you to know something. I was wrong. About everything. I let my family's bitterness poison me. I let my feelings for Marcus blind me to what we were doing. I told myself we were justified, that your father had wronged my family, that taking from you was somehow fair. It wasn't fair. It was cruel. You didn't deserve what we did to you. And your son didn't deserve to see his father turn into that person. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that sitting in this cell every day, I think about what I destroyed. Not just your trust, not just your marriage, but the person I used to be before I let hate consume me. You won. You fought back and you won. And I'm glad you did. Because someone had to pay for what was done to you. I hope you and Ethan are happy. I hope you found peace. Jennifer. I read the letter twice. And then I folded it, put it back in the envelope, and placed it in a box in the back of my closet labeled Past Lives. Jennifer was right about one thing. I had won. But more importantly, I'd survived. I'd protected my son. I'd stood up for myself when it mattered most. And that wasn't revenge. That was justice. That was accountability. That was refusing to be a victim. And it was the most powerful thing I'd ever done. 2 years after the trials, I sat on the deck of my new house, watching the sunset paint the Portland sky in shades of orange and purple. Ethan was inside doing homework, occasionally laughing at something on his phone. The sound of his laughter, unguarded, genuine, was the best thing I'd ever heard. It had taken time to get here. Time to heal, to rebuild, to learn how to trust again. The immediate aftermath of the trials had been difficult. The media attention was intense for a few months. The cousin conspiracy case, as some headlines called it, became a cautionary tale about deception and financial fraud in marriages. I was interviewed by local news, by a national morning show, even by a podcast about white-collar crime. I told my story over and over, each time feeling a little more distant from it, like I was describing something that had happened to someone else. Marcus served 2 years in prison before being paroled. He moved to California after his release, which was where he'd planned to go anyway, just under very different circumstances. He had supervised visitation with Ethan once a month, video calls twice a week. Ethan participated in these interactions dutifully but without enthusiasm. The relationship between father and son was cordial but distant. Some bridges, once burned, can never be fully rebuilt. Jennifer served 3 years before parole. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved back in with her mother, was working some retail job, keeping her head down. We'd never spoken after that one letter. There was nothing more to say. Morrison and Associates promoted me to senior paralegal, and I'd become something of a mentor to younger staff. People knew my story, impossible not to, given the publicity, but they respected how I'd handled it. David Kim, my boss, once told me, "You showed everyone here what integrity looks like under pressure. That matters." I'd started dating again. Tentatively. A few coffee dates, a couple of dinners. Nothing serious yet. I wasn't ready for serious. But I was ready to believe that not everyone was like Marcus, that trust wasn't a weakness, that love didn't have to come with conspiracy and betrayal. Rachel remained my best friend, my rock. She'd been there through every court date, every difficult night, every moment when I doubted myself. "You're the strongest person I know," she told me once. I didn't know if that was true, but I knew I was strong enough. And that was sufficient. Margaret Torres had become more than my attorney. She'd become a friend I met for lunch once a month. She'd started using my case as a teaching example in presentations she gave to other attorneys about forensic investigation in divorce cases. "You were the perfect client," she told me. "You stayed calm when most people would have crumbled. You trusted the process even when it was terrifying. And you never let them see you break." But I had broken, of course. Just not in public. I'd had nights where I cried until I couldn't breathe, mornings where I couldn't get out of bed, moments where I'd questioned everything about my life and my choices. But I'd broken in private, with Rachel or my mother holding me, and then I'd put myself back together and kept fighting. That's what survivors do. Ethan was 15 now, taller than me, with Marcus's build but my eyes. He was thriving in ways I'd hardly dared to hope for during those dark days. He joined the debate team and discovered he was brilliant at it. His ability to research, to construct arguments, to stay calm under pressure had all been honed during those months he'd spent investigating his father. "Mom," he'd said once, about a year after the trials, "do you think what I did was wrong? Spying on Dad, recording his calls." I'd thought about it carefully before answering. "I think you did what you felt you had to do to protect our family. Was it ideal? No. But you were 12 years old, dealing with an impossible situation. You made the best choices you could with the information and resources you had. I'm proud of you for that. But it kind of messed me up, didn't it? Having to be an adult when I was still a kid." "Yes," I'd admitted. "It did. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. No child should have to investigate their parents' betrayal. You went to therapy, which he had, we both had, and you've processed it. You've grown from it. That's all anyone can do." Now, watching him through the window as he studied, I saw a young man who was thoughtful, strategic, protective of those he loved. The experience had shaped him, yes. But it hadn't broken him. He was going to be okay. We both were. The inheritance money that Marcus had tried to steal, that $93,000 plus penalties and interest that the court had ordered him to repay, it had come back to me slowly, in installments that Marcus scraped together from his meager post-prison wages. I'd put most of it into a college fund for Ethan, untouchable and legally protected. The rest I'd used to build our new life, the house, some savings, a cushion for emergencies. But more than the money, what I'd won was something intangible. I'd won my dignity back. My sense of self. My belief that I deserved better than lies and manipulation. I'd won the knowledge that when someone tries to destroy you, you have the right to fight back. To protect yourself. To demand justice. And I'd won the understanding that revenge isn't about hurting people, it's about making sure that those who try to harm you face consequences for their actions. It's about accountability. It's about saying, "No, you don't get to do this to me," and walk away unscathed. One evening, about 18 months after the trials, Ethan and I were making dinner together. Pasta carbonara, ironically, which had been Marcus's favorite but which Ethan still loved. We were laughing about something silly, the kind of easy laughter that comes when you're comfortable with someone, when Ethan suddenly got quiet. "Mom, Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you hate Dad? I stopped stirring the pasta and really considered the question. No, I said finally. I don't hate him. I did, for a while. But hate is exhausting, and I don't want to carry it anymore. What I feel now is indifference, mostly. He's your father, and I hope he's building a better life for himself. But he's not part of my life anymore, except tangentially through you. And that's okay. Do you hate Jennifer? Another pause. I hate what she did. I hate how she targeted me, how she used me. But Jennifer herself? No. She's just a person who made terrible choices driven by bitterness and misplaced love. She's paying for those choices. That's enough for me. Ethan nodded. I think I feel the same way about Dad. I don't hate him. But I don't really know him anymore either. He's like someone I used to know. That's okay, I told him. However you feel about your father is valid. You don't owe him a relationship if you don't want one. I know. I just wanted to make sure you knew I don't blame you for any of this. You didn't break up our family. Dad did. I pulled him into a hug, this young man who'd become wise beyond his years. Thank you for saying that. The letters came occasionally, not from Jennifer anymore, but from other women who'd read about my case in articles or heard me speak at a legal conference Margaret had invited me to. Women who were going through their own versions of my story. Betrayal, conspiracy, gaslighting, financial fraud. Dear Sarah, I just read about your case, and I think I'm living through something similar. My husband has been acting strange, and I found emails that make me think he's planning something. I don't know what to do. Did you ever doubt yourself? Did you ever think maybe you were overreacting? I answered every letter. I told them, trust your instincts. Document everything. Find people you can trust, a friend, an attorney, a therapist. Don't confront until you're ready, until you have a plan, until you're protected. And know that whatever happens, you're stronger than you think. Some of those women later wrote back to tell me they'd left their partners, filed for divorce, protected their assets. They thanked me for giving them courage. I never felt like I'd given them anything they didn't already have. I just reminded them it was there. On the 2-year anniversary of the day I'd caught Marcus and Jennifer in his office, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove to the building where Tech Vista Solutions used to be located. They'd moved to a different space, but the building was still there. I sat in my car in the parking lot and remembered that morning. The anonymous phone call. The drive with Rachel. The walk down the hallway. The moment of discovery. I'd been so broken that day. So shattered. I'd felt like my entire world had collapsed. But I'd survived it. And not just survived, I'd fought back and won. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago. Trusting, maybe too trusting. Focused on fixing what was broken instead of recognizing what was beyond repair. Believing that love was enough, that commitment mattered more than honesty. I wasn't that woman anymore. I was harder now, more guarded. But I was also stronger, more confident, more aware of my own worth. Was I bitter? Sometimes. Did I struggle with trust? Absolutely. But I was building a new life on the ashes of the old one, and that life was good. Different from what I'd imagined, but good. Last month, I ran into someone I never expected to see again. Todd Stevens, the senior partner that Jennifer had tried to fabricate an affair with. We were both at a legal conference in Seattle, and he approached me during a coffee break. Sarah Mitchell. I heard you were speaking here. How are you? I'm well, Todd. Really well, actually. You? Good. I wanted to say, I never got the chance during all that mess. I'm sorry you were dragged through that. The things Jennifer said about us, the accusations. It was absurd. I know. And I never believed you were anything but professional. I hope you know that. I do. But I also wanted to tell you something. He looked uncomfortable. When all that came out, when the trial happened and everything became public, a few other women at the firm came forward with stories about men who'd harassed them or crossed boundaries. They said seeing you stand up for yourself, seeing you fight back, gave them courage to speak up about their own experiences. You started something, Sarah. Something important. I felt tears prick my eyes. I didn't mean to start anything. I was just trying to protect myself. And in doing so, you showed other people that it's possible. That you can fight back against people who try to hurt you and win. That matters. After he walked away, I sat with his words. I'd thought of my story as just that, my story. A personal battle against two people who'd wronged me. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was a testament to the fact that you don't have to accept betrayal. You don't have to quietly accept being victimized. You can fight back, and you can win. Now, sitting on my deck 2 years later, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the discovery, the investigation, the trials. The victory and the aftermath. The healing and the rebuilding. If someone had told me, on that awful morning when I found Marcus with Jennifer, that I'd end up here, peaceful, content, stronger, I wouldn't have believed them. I'd felt so destroyed, so completely devastated, that survival seemed impossible, let alone thriving. But here I was. Thriving. Ethan came out onto the deck. "Mom, what are you thinking about?" "Just remembering," I said. "How far we've come." He sat next to me, and we watched the sunset together in comfortable silence. Then he said, "You know what I learned from all this?" "What?" "That when people underestimate you, that's when you have the most power. Dad and Jennifer thought you'd never fight back, that you'd just accept whatever they did. That was their biggest mistake." "And what did you learn about yourself?" Ethan thought about it. "That I'm stronger than I thought. That I can handle hard things. And that protecting the people you love is worth whatever it costs." I pulled him close. "You're going to do amazing things with your life, you know that." "I learned from the best," he said. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. Thank you for listening to every twist, every courtroom battle, every moment of pain and triumph. I hope you found something in my story that resonates with you, whether it's the courage to fight back against someone who's wronged you, the strength to survive betrayal, or just the knowledge that you're not alone. Because that's what I want you to take away from this. You're not alone. Whatever you're going through, whatever battle you're fighting, there are people who understand. There are people who've survived similar nightmares and come out the other side. And if you're facing your own Marcus and Jennifer, your own betrayers, your own conspirators, your own people who've underestimated you, know this, you are stronger than they think. You are more resilient than you know. And you have every right to fight back, to protect yourself, to demand accountability. Don't let anyone tell you that fighting back makes you vindictive or bitter. Protecting yourself isn't revenge, it's self-respect. Demanding that people face consequences for trying to destroy you isn't cruelty, it's justice. I fought back. I won. And I built a life I'm proud of from the ashes of the one that was destroyed. You can too. To everyone who's been betrayed, who's been underestimated, who's been told they're not strong enough to survive, this story is for you. You are strong enough. You will survive. And one day, you'll sit on your own metaphorical deck, watching your own metaphorical sunset, and you'll realize that you didn't just survive. You thrived. Make sure to check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories of survival, of resilience, of refusing to be a victim. Stories that remind you that you're not alone, that you're stronger than you think, and that fighting back is always worth it. And wherever you are in the world, whatever battle you're facing, know that I'm rooting for you. You've got this. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and this was my story. The story of how I caught my husband with my colleague, how my son saved me, and how I took back my life from people who tried to destroy it. And it's a reminder that sometimes, the best revenge isn't about hurting people back. It's about refusing to let them break you. It's about standing up, fighting back, and building something beautiful from the ruins they left behind. That's not revenge. That's survival. And it's the most powerful thing you can do.